I call the meeting to order. Good evening and welcome to the June 16th, 2026 business meeting of your Ashland City Council. Councillor Dale will offer the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mayor. We acknowledge and honor the Aboriginal people whose ancestral homelands we work, the Karakutsum Band of the Shasta Nation, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here today. We honor the first stewards in the Rogue Valley and the lands we love and depend on, tribes with ancestral lands in and surrounding the geography of Ashland watershed, include the original past, present, and future indigenous inhabitants of the Shasta, Takelma, and Athabascan people. We also recognize and acknowledge the Shasta village of Quakaka, where the crow lights, that is now the Ashland City Plaza.
And Councillor Sherrill will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Sherrill.
Here.
Dale.
Here.
Bloom.
Here.
Mayor Graham.
Here.
Kaplan.
Here.
Duquesne.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Thank you.
So good evening, everyone. We have a full room of folks this evening, so I just want to start with a couple of reminders. When the council is in session, which we are in now, it's very important that it stays quiet in that part in the audience here so that we can make sure that we keep moving through our agenda. Please, no signs or any banners, that kind of thing. If you've come this evening to speak with the council about an issue, please make sure that you fill out a speaker request form. It's along the wall on the back. Make sure that when you fill it out, you indicate to us whether you are here to speak to a specific agenda item, or if you're here to speak about something that is not on the agenda, you'll be speaking during public forum. Please make sure you indicate that on your paper. And then bring it to this front tray here by the recorder's desk, and then she will help me bring you up at the correct time so that you can speak to the council on the issue that is important to you. We have a couple of other announcements today. Fire danger jumped to moderate and then to high within the space of a week. And so that's where we're at right now. We also know that we are in drought conditions, so just encouraging everyone to do what they need to around their home to both conserve water and also to reduce their fire risk as we move through this summertime together. We have a proclamation today for Bee City USA Pollinator Week. Whereas pollinators, such as thousands of species of bees, are essential partners in producing much of our food supply, and whereas pollinators provide significant environmental benefits that are necessary for maintaining healthy, diverse ecosystems in towns and cities, and whereas pollination plays a vital role for the trees and plants of our community, enhancing our quality of life and creating recreational and economic development opportunities, and whereas the City of Ashland manages parks, public landscaping, and other public lands that may include greenways and wildlife habitats, and whereas the City of Ashland provides recommendations to developers and residents regarding landscaping to promote wise conservation stewardship, including the protection of pollinators and maintenance of their habitats. Now, therefore, I, Tanya Graham, Mayor of the City of Ashland, do hereby proclaim the week of June 22nd to 28th, 2026 as National Pollinator Week in the City of Ashland, and as Ashland is an affiliate of Bee City USA, urge all citizens to learn more about how to make Ashland a more welcoming home for our pollinator friends. One last announcement is simply that when you are bringing your speaker request form up, please make sure that you have that to us by the beginning of the agenda topic that you are intending to speak on. Okay, we now move. There's a question I want to put to the council. We have received a request by the applicants for the number C public hearing, the Legislative Planning Action PA-T1 2026-00297. They are unable to attend this evening in person, and they have asked us to postpone. Right, I understand that, but they're not able to stay long enough for us to get to the hearing, so they're not able to speak to council. So they have asked us to postpone. I've talked with our development staff, and they said that that would be fine with them if we wanted to postpone. I did notice that our agenda for our single July meeting is very packed, so it would be appropriate if the council wants to postpone this item to be looking at either the August 4th or the August 18th meeting time. So if that is something that the council would like to do, the floor is open for a motion to postpone to a date certain. Councilor Sherrill.
Clarification question, Mayor.
Sure.
Does the applicant know it's going to be that long if they postpone?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And
Councilor
Mayor, could you,
Dale?
just another clarifying question, what was the date to postpone to?
August 4th or the 18th. Those are the next two Tuesday meetings, I believe.
Do we have a preference?
I would recommend August 4th.
Okay. Yeah, I would move to postpone that particular item to August 4th.
Second.
Any discussion?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Duquesne? Yes. Kaplan?
Yes.
Bloom?
Yes.
Dale?
Yes.
Sherrill?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Thank you. We are now to approval of minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes? Okay, the floor is open for a motion to approve. Councilor Hanson.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve study session minutes from June 1st and regular business meeting minutes from June 2nd as stated in the packet.
And the third set?
And June 3rd joint study session minutes as stated. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Dale?
Yes.
Sherrill?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Duquesne?
Yes.
Kaplan?
Yes.
Bloom?
Yes.
Okay. We are to the consent agenda. Would any counselor like to remove the single item on the consent agenda this evening? Okay, the floor is open for a motion.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Hanson?
Yes.
Duquesne?
Yes.
Kaplan?
Yes.
Bloom?
Yes.
Dale?
Yes.
Sherrill?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Great. And just a thank you to Brandon Polanco for stepping forward to serve on our Social Equity and Racial Justice Advisory Committee. So looking forward to working with him. And now we move on to our public forum. So we have 17 people who have signed up this evening to speak to us on issues that are not on our agenda. We only have a 15-minute time slot set for public forum. So this is what we're going to do is I'm going to give each person a full minute. What you'll get is the chime. The first chime will come when you have 10 seconds left. The second time will come at the end of that time period. What we encourage folks to do as well is there may be several of you here to speak on the same issue. So if somebody else has said something that you agree with, it's fine for you to give us the universal sign language signal for applause. We can see that without it disrupting our proceedings. And then when you get up, you can say whatever element that other person hasn't spoken. We realize that this can be frustrating, that 1 minute is not very much time, but also feel free to reach out to the council through our email address, and we can also receive your information there, particularly since these topics are not on the agenda tonight. We won't be making any decisions about them. And then will also remind everyone that our council rules are such that we don't interact with people when they're talking, so we are not able to ask you questions, but do feel free to follow up with us individually, and we can have those conversations. So I'm going to call out the names of the folks. What you're going to do is come up. Do we have our microphone? Yeah, the microphone will be at the podium. At the very beginning of your testimony, please tell us your name and the city in which you reside. You'll have a full minute. When you get to the last 10 seconds, you'll hear a first chime. End of the time, you'll hear a second chime. At that point, please finish the sentence you're on and move aside so the next person behind you can speak. You'll also notice that there is a light display on the podium, and so it'll move to yellow when you only have those 10 seconds left, and then it will move to red. All right, so feel free also to line up along along that wall to help us move through a little bit faster. Okay, we are going to start with John Maurer, followed by Benji Ben-Baruch, Susan Haveman, and John Tyler. Go ahead.
Go. John Maurer is my name. I have the privilege of spending the last 50 years as a physician and surgeon here in our great city. I am presenting you with a letter for the record, all right? It's a consensus statement for our coalition that has worked seriously over the last 6 months to preserve our hospital. With all due respect and appreciation for the time you provide to our fair city, the members of the coalition doing business at Save Our Ashland Community Hospital, please you to give serious consideration to our request stated below. Tomorrow, the city will receive a windfall of $4 million as a result of the breach of contract by the Sante Corporation for its failure to maintain the Ashland Community Hospital as a general hospital through mid-July. It is our view, as well as those thousands that have signed a petition, that the same $4 million represents the treasure, time, and efforts of generations of Ashland citizens to keep that hospital open. So our request is simple. Put that entire
Thank
$4
you.
million in a interest-bearing,
Thank you. Thank you. No. And just before you start, Alyssa, that went at 20 seconds. Is there a way to set it at 10? Okay. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Benji Ben-Baruch. I live in Ashland. Without a hospital, we are going to find ourselves traveling much longer to get medical care. And this 1 minute limit that we have, that's about the amount of time that we're going to be able to have to see our doctors once we get to Medford. And that also is a problem. The $4 million is not a windfall. It is a penalty that Asante is contractually obligated to pay us. We need to put it in a lockbox and reserve it for the future community hospital that we need to build and for medical care for all of our residents to come from that. That is an absolute must.
Thank you. We have Susan Haveman next, followed by John Tyler, then Hillary Avalon, and Nathan Wittenberg.
Suzanne Haveman. On the day we realize an illness, an injury to ourselves or to a family member, our lives change. It is truly a slap of reality. Your life flashes before you and you experience fear and uncertainty. This event is personal and unsettling and upsets our world that we call home. Those who have experienced these unsettling setbacks in their health or the health of a loved one have found Ashland Community Hospital to be an extension of home. A component of healthcare which is not experienced in all medical facilities was unique to Ashland. Ashland Community Hospital was not just bricks and mortar or medical skills and treatments. Ashland Community Hospital's culture took time to treat the whole person, a human connection of compassion, not just treating the illness, but providing the healing that goes into treating the mind, body, and soul. Please join us in this fight. Give us every bit of advantage in returning our hospital to this community. As good stewards, please guard these $4 million for the intended purpose of reinvesting in a healthcare facility in Ashland.
Thank you.
We need every
Thank you.
dollar of it.
Thank you, ma'am.
My name is John Tyler. I'm a member of the Social Equity and Racial Justice Advisory Committee. And at our last meeting in June, we received a memo from the city manager telling us that we were only going to be able to meet monthly from now on, and that they were not going to allow us to meet quarterly instead of monthly. And I want to strongly protest this because we cannot get our job done if we only meet quarterly. And I think it's a ridiculous thing for you to appoint us to this commission and then take away our ability to do our job. Thank you.
Thank you. Hillary Avalon. Nathan Wittenberg, followed by Paul Mozina, Allison Mendel, and Susan McCracken-Jan.
My name is Nate Wittenberg, Ashland resident since 1996. I've lived in my home at 245 NS since 1999. There have been summers prior to this one where I've been flabbergasted and infuriated by the fact that during the hottest, driest, and most dangerous months of the summer and fall, the city of Ashland consistently fails to close Ashland Loop Road above Morton Street to car traffic. The potential for a destructive forest fire that decimates our watershed is probably as high right now as it's ever been. The gates on Loop Road near the top of Morton, on Tolman Creek Road where the pavement ends, and on any other gated roads into our watershed, if they remain open, need to be closed to automobile traffic. In addition, there needs to be an enforcement and heavy fines for anyone going up there with a motorcycle or dirt bike that can circumvent the gates. It's our mayor and our city council's responsibility and duty to protect this city and its surrounding, including our critically important watershed, which also impacts our viability as a tourist destination, as well as to protect its residents' homes from a catastrophic fire by mitigating the risk of such a disaster to the greatest extent possible.
Thank you.
My name is Paul Mozina. I live in Ashland, and I want to apologize for a statement I made at the last council meeting where I asserted that that somehow the video for the meeting had been edited. I'm referring to the May 19th study session where Councilor Bloom was asked how he would answer the question about amending the budget, and he declined to answer, and the mayor said he's not participating. I assumed that his recusal was in that meeting video, and I was wrong. It was in the May 7th meeting video, and I falsely claimed that somehow the council had edited that video, and I apologize for the mistake. The point was, though, that the councilor recused himself from voting and deciding on the amendment to the budget, which diverted money for the child care grant program. It was you amended the Citizens Budget Committee budget. And Councilor Bloom declined to participate in that amendment, but then when the budget came up for vote on June 3rd, well, he voted for the amendment. The amendment was in the budget. You never voted for that amendment.
Thank you.
I'm Allison Mendel. I'm the chair of the Social Equity and Racial Justice Committee, Advisory Committee. I'm here because of the announcement that our committee would be cut back to 4 meetings a year rather than monthly. When I first heard this, I thought we could figure out a way to work with it, and having discussed it with the committee and thought about it myself, I realized that's just simply impossible. SERJAC is supposed to be the voice for the voiceless. We cannot be that if we cannot be in regular contact with the public. In the past 4 or 5 months, we have had many members of the public come speak to us about pressing issues that we are working hard on. That would not have happened if we had quarterly meetings. I don't even know what I would say to the public if they had to wait 3 months to come talk to us. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Susan McCracken-Jen, Emily Simon, Alan Sandler, and Debbie Nicewander.
I'm Susan McCracken-Jen. I'm a third-generation Ashlander, second-generation planning commissioner, and I'm the chair of the Public Arts Advisory Committee. I'm here to talk about the staff reductions that have been applied to certain committees and my point of view on that. With nearly $1.3 million in private funds committed to the City of Ashland for public art, and just days after the Year of Public Art was proclaimed in this very chamber, we received news that our committee's ability to deliver on its promise, let alone its basic mission, has been thwarted by this budget cut. With economic impact studies showing that the average return on investments in public art are 7 to 9 times the original investment, is the potential for $9 to $12 million worth of benefit to Ashland, worth a few hours of staff time. Thank you.
Thank you. Emily Simon?
I helped birth Surjac, and to see it die in this way and wither on the vine because of some small potatoes is really personally galling. But for my remaining 47 seconds, I have two asks. Ask number one is that this body not allow this to happen through a decision made by a non-public employee in terms of somebody who was voted on by the citizens of this city. So if the citizens of this city think that this is important, having Surjac, have a public meeting, get it on the forum, get it on an agenda, instead of meaning that people like us who know about it can come and make a comment. That's my first ask. My second ask, in my last 9 seconds, is that I'm not your lawyer, and I can't advise you as to public meetings law, but I can tell you that you have a lawyer, and that if there's a public meeting problem, he can tell you. Thank you.
Alan Sandler, followed by Debbie Nicewander, Carrie Mastain, and Brandon Polanco.
Alan Sandler, I lived here for 45
Alan, can you lift that up? Can we restart his time? Yeah, there you go.
Okay, thank you. I live out in Ashland, and I've been here for, 40 years, 45 years. Anyway, I agree with John Muir's letter, which he wasn't able to finish. He's running this group that is going to try and help him save the hospital. His comment, we have a group of people that are very well educated. Some of them have a lot of money, and they're going to help this thing. None of them are getting paid. They're all doing this because they love Ashland and they want the hospital back. So Alan DeBoer is not here tonight, but he made a comment that I'm just going to read this real quickly. I would add, this is Alan talking, I would add as an alternative, if they won't follow this request, to add that at least set aside in an interest-bearing account to bill for a year and to hold for a year and give us time to allow all of the citizens in the city, leadership, gather input, use the money, sign Alan DeBoer. I guess my time's up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name, hi. My name is Debbie Nicewander, and I'm here to talk about the heat. It's hot out there, really hot out there. And we don't have any shade on the night lawn. We don't even have a water source. So we can't have, sprinklers or misters or anything like that. We have no way to relieve ourselves from the heat, but we can let the folks leave their tents on the lawn during the heat cycle, because they come back to the lawn at 4:30 to 6:30, and that's the hottest part of the day. And we have a lot of elders. We call an ambulance minimum late once a week, and we don't need anybody suffering from heat stroke. So, holy cow. In the winter, we had that agreement. It wasn't written. So I hope we can get something in writing to accommodate the folks during the summer as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Carrie Mastain, followed by Brandon Polanco, Marty Mastain, and Nomad.
Hi, I'm Marty Mastin. I'm a resident of Ashland. My topic is about traffic calming petition that we have submitted. The residents of Granite Street and the surrounding area have requested the initiation of City of Ashland traffic calming program to address concerns of pedestrian safety measures and traffic calming strategies urgently needed on Granite Street and surrounding areas. Please find a petition I'd like to give to the recorder and ask that City of Council review. We submitted this petition in June of 2025, and it's been well supported by our neighbors. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carrie Maston. I'm that lady's sister, and I live on Granite Street also. 11 months after we submitted the petition, we finally got to meet with the Transportation Advisory Committee, and they listened politely, discussed our concerns, and voted to make Granite Street a bicycle boulevard. And that will reduce the speed limit from 25 to 20. But at the same time, which is good, but at the same time, they seemed to put our request for crosswalks on hold until that water project at the top of Granite is completed, which will be, I believe, 3 years from now. And it's the reason we're here is to ask for your help in promoting crosswalks on Granite. Did you know that there are no crosswalks on Granite Street and people cross willy-nilly?
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brandon Polanco, and I first want to say thank you to the mayor and to this committee for your appointment. I am part of SURJEC, and I want to speak to this incredible group that I got to find out about 3 months ago, and I was able to attend these meetings. And if they are reduced to quarterly, I may never have found out about this. And as somebody who's new to this town, who's been living here for over a year, being a person of color is an interesting navigation. And SURJEC is a space that I felt I could be a part of, add to the conversation, and observe what is going on in this town, and also what's happening in this country. And so all I speak to is, it's been an amazing 3 months, and I would love to keep meeting monthly. We have so much things that we want to do. There are so many opportunities to help give the voiceless voices, and I appreciate all of you for this openness, to all the citizens for giving me the time to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Nomad and Doug Houston.
My name is Nomad. I'm a member of the homeless community, also a resident of the night lawn that we have here. I wish to speak about possibly getting us to be able to have our tents stay up during the heat times like this. We have people that are stroke survivors, heart attack survivors. We have elderly and people who have other physical health issues that cause issues during the heat. It is an issue when we have to pack up as soon as it starts getting to about 75 to 80 degrees during the day. And then during the heat of the day, which is about 4:30, 6 o'clock, as my friend Debbie had stated, it is a problem and it needs to be dealt with. And we need some way to at least find a way to get a vote made and get ourselves to be able to have our tents staying there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Doug Houston, resident of Ashland, and I'm here to express my support of SURJEC and specifically the proclamation that's probably going to come before you opposing any ICE detention centers in the area, and then hopefully building on this city's support to make it a countywide proclamation. And I think we're a little more progressive than Newport and Coos Bay, who's already done this. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will move on now to public hearings. We have the first reading of Ordinance 3305, amending AMC 6.04 business licenses. Jordan.
Yeah, this is just a simple cleanup. We are moving to have all of our fees out of code language and into our resolution that we adopt every year. And this is just a cleanup of that was missed that first time around. We did this about 6 to 8 months ago. So to clarify, this is moving our business license fee out of the ordinance language and into our miscellaneous fee book.
Okay. Questions of staff? Oh, just hold on a minute. Excuse me? There's no speaking in the audience, so please, if you have to have a conversation, please take it out to the foyer. Thank you. Questions of staff? Councilor Hansen.
Thank you, Jordan. I realize this is house cleaning and totally support where we're going with this with all of our efforts. But it brings up an opportunity to talk about business licenses and compliance with business licenses and encouraging businesses to participate. As a business owner myself, I know I once first, it was a form of pride to go out and get my business license and put it on the wall. And as the years go on, I get the renewal notices, but it's less and less. I don't know. It's more, part of doing business. But I'm wondering if there's anything going on in the city with business licenses to encourage participation in the chamber and economic development that you might be able to take an opportunity to update us on.
More than happy to. So we are bringing our business license program along with our food and beverage tax revenue payment program back in-house to the city. For the last 5 years, we've had a third-party vendor, and we've just reached a point where we want to bring it back to provide stronger customer service and to be able to do stronger audits and things like that to help engage with our business community. So we're putting the pieces in place together, and we're working closely with the chamber to get the word out.
May I follow up? Yeah, so it sounds like there's an opportunity there to not only re-engage the business community, but also potentially bring in some more revenue as businesses grow with the audit. So it's just not an automatic renewal. It's like, all of a sudden, my widget business now has 100 employees instead of 10, and that's what the fee is based on, right? Correct. Okay, thank you so much for your efforts.
Any other questions of staff? Okay, I open the public hearing. Alyssa, has anyone requested to speak to us on this issue?
No.
I close the public hearing. The floor is open for a motion. Councillor Bloom.
Yeah, thank you. I move to approve the first reading of Ordinance 3305, an ordinance amending 6.04, business license sections 6.04.105, duplicate license 6.04.120, temporary license, and 6.04.130, delinquent payment.
Okay. Councillor Bloom?
No.
Councillor Hanson?
Yeah, again, I think it's a great housekeeping effort, but also a reminder to our business community that we have an amazing chamber that is, more represented in the town center, and it would be great to get better representation from other parts of the city too, and participate in where the chamber's going and economic development and all that. Rising tide lifts all boats. It's a great business community here. I encourage people to, really get involved.
Councillor Duquesne.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I appreciate the housekeeping. This is a miscellaneous fee, and I did not support the first of the miscellaneous fees, and I won't be supporting this one.
Further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Sherrill?
Yes.
Dale?
Yes.
Bloom?
Yes.
Kaplan?
Yes.
Duquesne?
No.
Hanson?
Yes.
Motion passed.
We move on to the second public hearing. Public hearing and first reading of ordinances 3296, 3297, 3298, and 3306, establishing the manufactured home park zone, amending manufactured housing development standards, adopting related comprehensive plan and zoning map amendments, and establishing manufactured home park resident protections. Jordan.
I'll hand it off to Director Goldman, as no one can say it better.
Good evening, Council. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me. So the subjects that we're speaking on tonight were the very same subjects at last night's study session. So I do have an abbreviated presentation, both for Council and those that may be watching with interest in what the Manufactured Home Park Zone project is. Essentially, the project was derived out of our housing production strategy, which was adopted by Council in 2023. That program identified a number of strategic actions that the city would take to address housing needs within our community. The maintenance and quality, maintain the quality and support the preservation of existing manufactured home parks was one of those items, and it was prioritized to happen early in the 8-year process because of the need to retain those existing manufactured homes and support their long-term viability. So in terms of the project, it had a couple objectives, the first being to preserve existing manufactured home parks while supporting opportunities for reinvestment and modernization of those parks. So that is accomplished in the ordinances presented to you this evening by establishing a dedicated manufactured home park zone and a comprehensive plan designation that gets assigned to existing manufactured home parks. It facilitates reinvestment in existing parks by allowing partial improvements of existing non-conforming parks without requiring full upgrades. This would be done through a conditional use permit process. So an applicant that wanted to do a phased improvement could do a smaller phase and not be subject to bringing the entire park into compliance with current code. It also modernizes existing standards to accommodate smaller manufactured dwellings, modular units, and RVs as allowed by state law. And I do need to make a clarification from the study session last night. I indicated that I was not aware of state law that required manufactured home parks to be located in, that required recreational vehicles to be permitted outright within manufactured home parks. And further review, ORS 197-463 states exactly that RVs are permitted outright wherever manufactured home parks are located. So that is a change in our ordinance to align with state law, and also one that provides for an opportunity for that needed housing type. Additionally, the ordinances would allow limited park serving amenities such as management offices, community buildings, coffee shops through a conditional use permit review. So those are new uses that would be allowed in the newly formed manufactured home park zone. And last but not least, the increase in allowable densities. Currently manufactured home parks located in multifamily residential zones can have 13.5 units per acre. The proposed ordinances before you would allow that to be increased up to 18 units. And that facilitates the potential for essentially 2 small units where 1 unit might be currently. If a manufactured dwelling was moved out, you may be able to get a duplex-like unit in the same space. And we are seeing in the industry a lot of variety in both prefabricated and manufactured homes that were not necessarily in existence in the early 80s, the last time this ordinance was looked at. So another purpose was to support long-term housing choice and align local regulations with Oregon law. So as noted, the ordinances preserve the existing manufactured home parks as needed housing resource. They protect the existing manufactured home parks from conversion to non-park uses. So, and I would say that is true for those that would be rezoned as part of this effort. There are a couple manufactured home parks, namely the Upper Pines project that's within the climate-friendly area. That is a designated manufactured home park, but if its zone is not modified as part of this ordinance, and it's recommended that it not be in order to develop out with those climate-friendly area objectives, that could convert to non-park uses. So I wanted to clarify that as an opportunity for conversion. But it would provide notice residents of an opportunity to organize the event of a park sale, or in the case of the Upper Pines, a park conversion. So in both of those circumstances, it would trigger what is being proposed in Ordinance 3306 to have notice requirements to the residents of existing manufactured home parks. So those ordinance provisions would apply to any existing manufactured home park. The ordinances presented also align local standards with state law requirements for manufactured housing. This largely gets to removing some of the design criteria that are imposed by our existing ordinance and allowing manufactured homes to develop in the same capacity as single-family homes on single-family lots, as well as removing some of the design requirements and minimum size requirements for manufactured homes within manufactured parks. The ordinance specifically 3297 incorporates state mandated changes for child care facilities and residential care facilities. This was an opportunistic change because we are modifying the use table to incorporate those changes that are required under House bills that were passed by the legislature. I did want to note that the proposal before you goes one step further in this regard than the state requirements. We are required for child care facilities to allow them in all multifamily zones and commercial zones. Our draft ordinance before you tonight In part, the Child Care Committee had recommended that they be permitted outright in all zones. And so the use table presented to you this evening would allow for child care facilities in single-family zones as well. And again, so that's somewhat unrelated to the manufactured home park zone, but a change that is incorporated into the ordinance opportunistically. So, and lastly, the ordinances reduce the regulatory uncertainty through clear standards and procedures. This gets to some of the issues of how close can units be together. We've changed the draft ordinance to stipulate that manufactured homes within a manufactured home park have to meet separation requirements as required by fire and building code, but that provides greater flexibility in terms of existing units that may be closer together than the existing code would allow, provided they meet building code, or if somebody wanted to build a new deck, if it could meet fire code adjacent to a manufactured dwelling, that could be permitted. So I also quickly wanted to note which properties or manufactured home parks are being proposed for inclusion in the manufactured home park zone. Wingspread Manufactured Home Park and Tolman Creek Manufactured Home Park are the two within the city limits that would be included in the new zone. There are two that are existing parks that are outside the city limits but within our urban growth boundary, namely Siskiyou Village and Nauvoo Park at the north and south ends of the community, that when those properties annex into the city, they would annex as with the manufactured home park comprehensive plan designation, which would then mean they'd be subject to enter the city as manufactured home park zone properties. So again, I kind of went over the ordinances in general, but I wanted to touch on specific land use ordinance amendments in the manufactured home park zone. So increases
Brandon?
allowable, yes.
Just a clarification, we're going to take these one ordinance at a time, correct?
Yes, I've got.
So we'll
each
have some
separated.
discussion. Okay, that
Excellent.
sounds great. Thank
So
you.
this first ordinance, this is the bulk of your packet. The ordinance 3296, increase allowable manufactured home park density to 18%, as I mentioned. It increases the allowable lot coverage from 65 to 65% coverage and 35% landscaping. I would note for Wingspread, that's not a change. That's their current requirement. But for the park on Tolman Creek, which is presently zoned R1 3.5, it has a slightly lower lot coverage. It would also accommodate a larger range of housing types by allowing prefabricated units, modular units, and RVs, which again are allowed by state law. It replaces traditional zoning stepbacks, as I mentioned, allows for that proportional improvements through expansion of non-conforming parks through a conditional use permit process. It also removes minimum lot size and unit dimensions, clarifies annexation standards and zoning treatment for manufactured home parks when they enter the city, and updates and clarifies the standards to implement the recent housing legislation, including, as I mentioned, the allowances for childcare and residential care uses. So that's an abbreviated list of a 50-page ordinance presented before you, but happy to take any questions you have on it.
Questions for staff? Councilor Sherrill.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Brandon, for another great presentation. My main question is about the RV standard. Thanks for clarifying that we're going to be in line with the state. And can you maybe just briefly touch on the definition of an RV and what protections current park residents that live in an RV full-time as their dwelling would have? Or would they be grandfathered in? Would they be legal existing non-conforming? Could you talk about those protections?
Yeah, most definitely. So to answer your second question first, while I look for the definition, the manufactured home park that contains recreational vehicles currently, those are considered non-conforming. And essentially, if they were removed, theoretically, they could not be replaced. Through adoption of this ordinance, then becoming an outright allowable use, they become conforming and would not be, in that sense, considered non-conforming. They would need not be grandfathered, they'd just be strictly legal under that standard. In terms of the definition, a recreational vehicle currently is defined in our ordinance as a self-propelled or towable mobile unit used for temporary dwelling purposes by travelers. So that's a rather restrictive definition. If somebody is living in it full-time, it is neither temporary nor are they necessarily travelers if they're residents of our community. So the proposed change follows from essentially DMV and Oregon definitions, but it says a vehicular type unit certified by the manufacturers complying with ANSI A1192, ANSI A1195, NFPA 1192, or successor standards, and primarily designated as temporary living quarters for recreational camping, seasonal, or travel use, which either has its own motive power or mounted on or towed by another vehicle. So that aligns with DMV. It's a little bit broader than a typical recreational vehicle, specifically because ANSI 119.5 is generally a standard for park model recreational vehicles, which rather than conventional RVs. And so it allows those as well. And by saying primarily designated as temporary, it's in alignment with the DMV, but that word primarily is doing a little heavy lifting in that if it is used as a permanent occupancy, it's not in violation of that definition.
If I may, Mayor, thank you for that great definition. Just to follow up with that, who would be interpreting if it met those standards? And we would assume that if it's NFPA compliant and ANSI compliant, that it's safe. It's fire and life safe for somebody. Is that a park owner's responsibility, or is that the city to check that certification and enforce it?
Yeah, so that is, I mean, in terms of being meeting standards of a manufacturer, that would be required by DMV before it could be put on the road. The city does do utility connects for an RV or for a manufactured dwelling when it comes in, so our building department would go out and evaluate it, but they would essentially just be verifying that it is that has a manufacturer stamp on it.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Mayor.
Other questions? Councillor Hanson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Brandon. This is great to see this come this far. In 22, there was some community meetings. I was able to attend some with some of the constituents here in the audience, looking for the manufactured home park zone. And this project, to see it come this far, is great. So thank you, staff, and everybody in this room for your passion and participating. One of the things we learned, or one of the things I learned from the housing production strategy in 23 that you presented, was that we have a various housing stock in Ashland, and we need more diversity within that stock, and manufactured home parks are a real niche in that. So I was surprised when I read the report in the packet that we didn't have something identified like a climate-friendly areas does on the map for suggested land use. And I know we're not in the business of telling people what to do where per se, but we kind of are. And so I was just curious, is there any ability for the city to look at niches of land, or to somehow try to spur some additional development of mobile home parks?
The short answer is yes. What's presented to you this evening is really looking at existing parks and designating those with a new comprehensive plan designation to be manufactured home parks. But through the creation of a new zoning type, a manufactured home park zone, and a new comprehensive plan designation, through master planning other areas, the community could look at whether some of those are well suited for those new designations. Additionally, if existing manufactured home parks were to look at expansion into adjoining areas, they could propose a rezone of the neighboring property to new manufactured home park zone in order to afford the flexibility the new zone provides. And through annexation, also an existing park, if there's adjacent land that provides an opportunity for expansion. On this one, I'm thinking primarily Siskiyou Village, they could theoretically request that that annexation include the new comprehensive plan designation and zone change. So we did not, as part of this project effort, look at areas that were not currently manufactured home parks at rezoning, but it's something that either the city or a property owner could propose in order to achieve that housing type.
Right, and if I may, it seems though we have suggestions in the packet of organizing and purchasing existing parks for tenants to become tenant owners. And it just seems like we should, throw it at the wall and see if it sticks, that a community project might be able to buy a piece of land and establish a park. And or, we have land banking, land trusts that are really focused on multi-dwelling, high-rise, but there might be a piece of land that the city owns that doesn't allow for those kinds of things, like it's close to the railroad tracks, or something that doesn't allow affordable housing density like the way we do, that I think that this council and future councils might want to look at adding this kind of stock into for some sort of community project too. Thank you very much for everything.
I think that's a good point, and if I could just elaborate on one thing, because you
Sure.
reminded me of a provision in the ordinance that I think is pertinent to this question.
Okay.
The manufactured home park says that if you're within that zone, that's all it could be. We are not removing the manufactured home parks developments as an allowable use in R1 3.5 or R2 zones. So there's no restriction on where they could be compared to our current ordinance. So if somebody looked at an R2 property and wanted to develop a manufactured home park, they could do so under that zoning, or they could propose to assign the manufactured home park zone to it as well. So again, I just wanted to note that we haven't restricted where they are allowable in the city versus what currently exists today.
Which offers more flexibility.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any further questions of staff? So Alyssa, has anyone else signed up since I got this list? Okay. So we have 8 people who have signed up this evening to speak to us in the general topic of these 4 ordinances. So what we're going to do is we're going to take all of those comments now at the beginning, sort of attached to this one, but council understands that some of the comments may be more specific to the other ordinances. Johan, is there any legal issue in terms of that? It should be fine, right? As long as we take it at the beginning, the first ordinance. Okay. Each person will have 3 minutes. You'll offer your testimony at the podium, the same structure that we had for public forum, which is please tell us your name and the city in which you reside at the beginning of your testimony. The visual cue on the podium will it'll be green until you get to the last 20 seconds of your time, at which point you'll hear the first chime, and the light will turn to yellow. When you get 20 more seconds out, your time will be done. The light will turn to red. You'll get the second chime. At that point, please be complete with your testimony. You're, again, welcome to line up in the order that I call your name, and I think we will go ahead and get started. The first person will actually be by Zoom. So we have Bruce Davis via Zoom, and then we have Mary Lou Gross, Dolores Nims, and Alan Ackroyd. Mr. Davis, you have 3 minutes to speak with us. Please tell us your name and the city in which you reside to begin your testimony.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Bruce Davis. I live in Gardnerville, Nevada. I'm a co-managing member with my brother of an Oregon LLC, which owns Siskiyou Village and has owned it for approximately 27 years. My brother sent a letter in for the record. He made one small error, and he said he's been in the industry 40 years. I've actually been in it 50 years. Had over 1,000 spaces in Oregon and 12 parks, 42 parks in western states. I've built parks, operated parks, filled parks, and closed parks. As president of the Western Mobile Home Association, which is the largest park owners association in the country. And I'm frustrated that this whole activity has been going on without our awareness. We were first made aware of it in a letter from the planning department, I think on May 20th. And we have other commitments. We can't just drop everything we're doing. And I see a lot of good that's been done. I see a lot of bad. We attempted to expand our park about 20 years ago. I met with Maria, and I can't remember her last name and haven't had a chance to go back in my records. We had engineered drawings done by Hardy Engineering. And at the time, the city says, we're going to oppose that because we want employment there. We need jobs. And we said, okay. We went back, revised our plan, and included some self-storage with it, brought it back for a subsequent meeting, and Maria again said, the city's going to oppose that. We were in your sphere of influence, which we still are. We could have had about 40 more spaces of affordable housing 20 years ago when we wanted to do it. Didn't happen. So what's going to be 20 years from now? The park that we have existing is already 65 years old. Infrastructure does not last forever. We're under rent control statewide. So investing more money where we're limited to recover our cost of operations.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. I don't know if you can hear the buzzer, but the 3 minutes is up.
Thank you. I appreciate the 3 minutes.
Thank you. Next, we have Mary Lou Gross, Dolores Nims, and Alan Ackroyd. Yes, and and we also can bring the microphone to anyone who needs it in their seat. And feel free to pull that microphone down, adjust it as you need to so you can speak into it.
Let me put on my reading glasses too. I wrote a brief little speech here. Full disclosure, I'm a licensed real estate broker, so some of you probably recognize me. I'm actually here speaking as a resident of a mobile home park.
Can you give us your name and where you live?
Mary Lou Gross, and I live at Wingspread Mobile Home Park.
Thank you.
I've participated over the years in meetings and committees dealing with this very issue. First as an advocate for my mother, who lived in Wingspread Mobile Home Park, and later as a resident of our community. And as our community grew, and that's actually started in the 1990s, the discussion about being able to buy your park. I later got involved in committees in our neighborhood because the concern was, what if this park did come up for sale? We have people who've lived here, actually multi-generations, where maybe a parent, like in my situation, a parent bought the home. I moved in to help my mom. She died. I stayed trying to get it ready to sell. And then I realized, what a great community. This is a very supportive community that takes care, we take care of each other. We're involved, even though there is a property owner, we're actively involving keeping our community picked up, landscaped. We've worked with the fire department to make sure that we are in a fire-wise community, yet we don't have the protections that a homeowner who owns their land does. Not even the protections of a condo owner who doesn't own the land under the unit, but they have the legal right to have more options for their living space. The cost of our rentals, of what we pay monthly, has gone from, I think it was around $300 when my mom bought her place, and it's almost $800 a month now. So we are paying big fees. I think I saw in the February report, it used an example of $450 a month. Clarification, it's more like in this valley, you spend anywhere from about $650 up to probably close to $1,000 a month if they have additional fees and services. So I really hope that people can see the wiseness of having a community like ours. We have a lot of retirees, we have young families with kids, we have people in a variety of professions, professional people, craftspeople, artists, musicians. They all represent
this community. And I lived on a houseboat in Sausalito. We went through the same thing. So do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Dolores Nims. I live in Wingspread Mobile Home Park. Consultants, staff, and counselors of Ashland, thank you for the many hours that you have invested in creating this ordinance. We have been working on this for over 2 years. First, I'd like to address the letter from the Manufactured Housing Communities of Oregon that you recently received. They have requested additional time. The owners have had many months to consider this ordinance. The consulting firm was hired about 9 months ago and contacted the owners. The owner of Wingspread refused to talk to the consultants. There is concern that the ordinance is in compliance with all state laws. Brandon's team worked with the consultant, have meticulously addressed this issue. The zoning ordinance does not impact state laws as it is a local ordinance and only applies to Ashland. This letter appears to be a last-ditch stand by the park owners to derail the zoning ordinance. Secondly, the park owners want to have the power to sell the park to the highest bidder. I assume everyone on the council lives in a stick-built home. Imagine your reaction if someone told you you had to be out of your home in 4 months. The land under your home had been sold and your home was going to be destroyed. You would lose your major asset. Where would you go? How would you live? This is the fear that we live with at Wingspread. Thirdly, Ashland needs low-cost housing. Families can't afford to live here. Our grade schools are closing. Mobile home parks provide low-cost housing. Do we want to lose them? Please vote yes. Save our homes. Thank you.
Alan Ackroyd, followed by Marianne Shank, Rich Rohde, and Dylan Dale.
Hello, my name is Alan Ackroyd. I'm a resident of Wingspread Mobile Home Park. I've thought about this zoning change for some time and been participatory in some of the councils discussing it. And I've come to the conclusion what we're really dealing with here is an imbalance of power between the park owners and the residents thereof. And as I thought about it, it kind of reminded me of history, namely the history of the feudal system in medieval Europe. Okay, and that went something like this. The king rules from his castle on the hill. The serfs live below and pay the king for the privilege of living on his land. The king may change his mind at any time and revoke the privilege. Accordingly, the serfs may be forced to move elsewhere. Unfortunately, like us, their hovels are not portable. They probably scramble to survive, even though the king may give some minor compensation. I think you get the analogy. Fortunately, we don't live in medieval Europe. Some evolutionary steps have been taken recently. One was by our excellent Representative Pam Marsh, who helped craft a state law that limits the amount the owners can charge for the rental fee annually to 7%. However, when you consider if it was fully implemented at 7% per year, that would mean that the rent is going to double every 10 years. And we've noticed that kind of acceleration. And it's really problematic. It's problematic because a lot of people in these parks, their only source of income is Social Security. And I guarantee that's not going up by 7% a year. So we're getting squeezed more all the time. And the Ashland Land Use Ordinance proposes to change the zoning of manufactured homes to an exclusive designation that does not change with land ownership, among other things. However, this, as we've seen, is being challenged by the landlords. In summary, the City of Ashland has the opportunity to enhance the security of the parks in question and restore some semblance of a balance of power to its residents through this proposal. Finally, I want to thank the city and its various departments that have worked on this proposal for years. We as park residents are extremely grateful for your support and urge its adoption. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Mary Ann Shank. I live in Ashland, also at Wingspread Park. First, like the others, I want to thank you so tremendously for all of the work you've put into these ordinances. You just can't imagine. We're so close to having homes that we can live in for the rest of our lives. It's just astounding. Thank you. Next, the letter that Dolores mentioned. I know you've all gotten copies of this from the co-owners of the properties. I call them co-owners because we are owners too. We own our homes. They own the land. We're not tenants. We are co-owners, and we need each other. They need us to make their millions. We need them to have our own home. It is a symbiotic relationship. We need each other, and we need to progress together. I introduce you to the people who would rather throw a sledgehammer at you than reach out a hand to shake. These are our co-owners, sadly. Most of the points they bring up in this letter are pretty absurd. And I have no doubt at all that you've noted them and even laughed at some of them. I did find out one thing that I didn't know before. Hidden down on page 4, there's a bullet point that says, as a bad point, the ordinance sets a precedent that other Oregon cities may follow. And may I say, hallelujah, sister, I hope it does. You are in a unique position. Ashland is really pretty small potatoes in the manufactured home world. Oregon is not. This small potatoes group has the opportunity now to really set precedents for the whole state. Thank you for considering this, and I trust in your integrity to do so.
Thank you. We have Rich Rohde, Dylan Dale, and Teresa Cisneros. Did we receive another? Not for this, okay.
Rich Rohde, 124 Ohio. That's a hard testimony to follow. That was great. I wanted to urge you all to pass this ordinance tonight. And I wanted to first just clarify the absolute reason why we're here. As an organizer, I was working with Oregon Action, and beginning in Ashland, we worked with the residents of 4 mobile parks, one in Ashland, 2 in Medford, and 1 in Talent, that were all sold out from under them. They were beautiful communities. I got a chance to have meals with them, go to meetings with them, work with them on what we could do, but they all, everyone, 1 out of 100 and more units, 1 was able to move. They all lost those units. They lost their homes, and they lost their community. They loved each other. There was an older woman in her 80s in Talent, and I went to visit her one day, and out in front of her house was a whole new little garden. And I said, "Oh, you did a really good job." She said, "I didn't do it. The neighbor kids from across the way came out and put that in." She had to move out and go into a nursing home because of that action. So we need this protections to keep us from that happening in Ashland or anywhere else. And so that's the primary thing. The other thing I wanted to mention is that this kind of contradicts Brandon a little bit. The formulation of this came from a woman from Portland who came down a few years ago into Wingspread and spread the news of what Portland had done in terms of theirs. And we began organizing. We talked to all sorts of folks from different parks, and we knew we wanted that. We were going to go directly to the city council, but we got good advice, and that advice was take it into the homeless production strategy, which we did, and we followed that all the way through. We followed it through all the meetings with all the commissions, with the planning commission, with the housing advisory committee, and all of those. And at every stage of the way, we got unanimous work on it. And it got a little bit better. And now it's arrived to you. And at the same time, we get a letter from these rich folks up in Portland that want to protect their investment, not protect the investment that people have in their houses, but protect their investment. We should refuse to even acknowledge that, move forward, vote tonight on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the council and mayor. Thank you for giving me the time. My name is Dylan Dale. I'm a resident of Ashland. You may know me from my service on the City of Ashland's Transportation Advisory Committee, but tonight I'm here as a member of the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors, the local realtor association representing Jackson and Josephine counties. Our members work daily with property owners and real estate consumers across the region, including residents and owners of manufactured home parks right here in Ashland. We have a shared vision and goal of preserving affordable housing and recognize that manufactured home park tenant protections are top of mind for the city. However, I'm here tonight with genuine concerns that the current proposal, despite being well-intentioned, will do more harm than good for the tenants, owners, and the city alike. Any ordinance of this scope needs to be fully vetted and grounded in clear and objective language that can be applied consistently and fairly, regardless of who the owner is or what the circumstances are. As presented, we do not think this proposal is quite there yet, and we have two major concerns we would like the council to consider before moving forward. As presented, the first is the proposed 180-day right of refusal. We support giving residents meaningful time to organize and explore purchase, and we recognize the council's intent in extending that window. However, increasing the timeline from the current 14-day statutory requirement in the state of Oregon to 180 is not an incremental adjustment. It is more than a 12-fold increase, and it carries real risk for the very tenants it is designed to protect. If an owner is selling due to financial hardship, a timeline that long could cause financing to fall through or force a closure that otherwise would not have happened, leaving residents with fewer options than they had before. We believe that a 30 to 60-day period would be a substantial expansion of the current statute while keeping the process workable for everyone involved. Our second concern is the relocation plan provisions in Ordinance number 3306, which we believe needs significant review before being a workable proposal. The current language, 1, states that the city may require a relocation coordinator, but provides no criteria for when that requirement is triggered or who bears the associated cost. 2, it does not include a standardized city-provided template for the plan itself, increasing the burden for both owners and the city. 3, it also states that no park may close or convert without the city's approval of the plan, yet does not set any evaluation criteria, a timeline for the city's own review process, and does not account for circumstances when closure timelines are outside of an owner's control. When language is that open-ended, two owners in identical situations could end up being treated very differently, and that inconsistency creates unpredictability and liability for owners, tenants, and the city itself. We urge the council to return this proposal to the Planning Commission to incorporate this feedback and take the time needed to craft language that sets clear and objective standards that are fair, predictable, and workable for every party they govern. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. We have Teresa Cisneros and Kate Hartzell.
Good evening, Mayor, councilors, community members. My name is Teresa Cisneros, and I've been an Ashland resident for 22 years. I'm currently on Iowa Street, I'm a founder and executive director of Coalición Fortaleza, and I'm here tonight in support of these ordinances. Nearly 30% of Ashland residents are age 65 and older, and more than 15% of residents live below the federal poverty line. These are not abstract statistics. They are our neighbors, seniors on fixed incomes, working families, people with disabilities, service workers, and longtime residents who are increasingly struggle to remain in the community they have helped build. That's why preserving existing affordable housing is so important. Manufactured home communities are among the last sources of naturally affordable housing in Ashland. Once they're lost to redevelopment or rising costs, they are nearly impossible to replace. These ordinances help create pathways toward one of the most sustainable housing solutions available, resident ownership. We can already see what is possible through the Talent Community Cooperative and other resident-owned communities such as Camino Colibri. These are two developments that Coalición Fortaleza has supported. Before residents purchased the Talent Community, it was owned by an investor who lived outside our community, outside our state, and even outside of our country. The housing payments made by local residents were generating wealth that left our local community, our local economy. The owner had little connection to the people living there and no long-term investment in the well-being of our region. Today, that community is owned by the residents themselves and decisions are made locally. Resources are reinvested locally, residents have a voice in the future of their neighborhood, and greater protection from displacement. Resident ownership does not happen overnight, and residents must organize and form a cooperative, secure financing, conduct legal and financial due diligence, negotiate a purchase, and establish democratic governance systems. It requires commitment and partnership and education, but the outcome is definitely worth it. The economic benefits are significant, and resident-owned communities stabilize housing costs, preserve affordability, strengthen neighborhood engagement, and keep wealth circulating within the local economy. At a time when housing costs continue to rise, these ordinances recognize that housing should not be treated as a community infrastructure, not simply as a commodity. They support a proven model that protects seniors, working families, and low-income residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Kate Hartzell. I live in Ashland. I did submit some information last night on my response and a little bit of information about the MHCO letter that you all got yesterday. I know you've had a busy schedule and a large agenda, so if you didn't get to it, I hope that you can take some time later to look at it. One of the things that it highlights is the late arrival of associations like the one you heard from a few moments ago and the Manufactured Home Owners Association. And it's, as I watch national politics, I'm learning to watch what they do and assume it's their strategy. And in this case, this process wasn't done in the dark of night. It's been there. And when you have an association with paid staff, the purpose of which is to protect the interests of their membership, one would have thought if they really wanted to be involved and contribute constructively, they would have shown up during the process. So now you have at least two associations showing up at the end trying to scuttle the whole thing. When I was on the council from 2000 to 2008, as you know very well, Brandon, we were going through a process of Ashland being sold by many people coming up from California with a lot of money that they had gained from the sale of their house there and spending it here. We tried many, many strategies, and often they were blocked at the state level and at the association level, saying, you can't do that, we will sue. Yet again, 20 years later, we've got the same situation. So I honor what the studying you've done tonight on the importance and the argument in favor of this. Hedge funds are out there buying up property. You've had an audience tonight from the hospital giving witness to that very same thing. And we need to stand up against it and use our community power to try to stand in the way of that salesmanship. The last thing I'll say, I'm not here as a state representing the state tonight, but I work for the Oregon Department of Human Services, and I reviewed a case just today where the father is disabled, isn't able to work. I think in that case, the wife wasn't, and the daughter was out working at Starbucks to pay the rent. They have a trailer. And when I see those cases where there is a trailer, or in some cases just an RV that's able to park at a park, I know that those people at least have some kind of roof over their head. They've either been loaned, or they've been able to buy a trailer, or some kind of, not sticks and mortar house. That is a lifeline to those people and to those families from across the spectrum. It isn't just older people. So please, I appreciate all the attention you've given to the speakers here tonight, and I hope that you'll hold fast to the work that your community members have done. Thank you.
Further questions of staff? Brandon, would you just give an overview of the type of notice and solicitation of engagement that we've undertaken and our consultants have undertaken in this process?
Sure. I think some of the speakers spoke to before this process began with the housing production strategy and the application for a Department of State Lands Conservation grant for this project. So that was a different notification process through establishing this as a goal. But this land use process for this legislative change, once we had the consultants on staff, their first task was to reach out to all the park owners, and they did not have a complete response rate from each of the park owners, and that included mailings as well as where we could obtain phone numbers and emails, phone calls and emails. So subsequent to that, the legal notices were sent out, and I apologize, I was looking for the dates, which I think I neglected to bring, but we did send out notices to all park owners and all park residents. The May 20th date was mentioned by speaker as when they received notice. So those notices were sent out by requirement under state law that those notices have to go out at least 20 days, but no greater than 40 days prior to a public hearing. So that is one of the issues in terms of receiving that notice. We also notified the community in a variety of ways in terms of newspaper articles, as well as a community survey that was advertised broadly on the city's website, that the city was getting input in terms of the development of a manufactured home park zone. So those are some of the ways that we provide notice. I guess lastly, shortly after the mailed notices were sent out, we actually posted notices on each of the properties so that park owners, park residents would know when the Planning Commission hearing was and when the City Council hearing was scheduled. And those notices are still posted on those properties.
Thank you. Additional questions, Councillor? Okay. The floor is open for a motion. Councillor Kaplan?
Thanks, Mayor. I move to approve first reading of ordinance number 3296, amending Ashland Municipal Code sections 18.2.2.030, 18.2.3.170, 18.2.3.180, 18.3.9.020, 18.3.9.030, and related provisions to establish the Manufactured Home Park Zone, MHPZ, Modified Manufactured Home Park Standards, and implement state law requirements relating to child care facilities and residential care uses as presented.
Second.
Councillor Kaplan?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Many of the people who spoke talked about this being a long time coming. I served on the advisory committee for the housing production strategy, and that was back in 2021, I guess it was. We were starting to talk about this. It was included in it, and this council approved was the first city in the state to approve a housing production strategy. That was back in 2023. Spoke with many friends in the audience who about the need to protect housing in our manufactured home parks. So I'm really thrilled to finally see this get across the finish line. It seemed like it was a long time coming, but I know there was a lot of work to do, really careful work to make sure that it's that it can be done. I think there's several separate issues. One issue is really just protecting the park, protecting the homes in the park. And I'm happy that that's what this specific ordinance does. keeps, as several speakers mentioned, keeps the park from being converted or sold and people losing their investment. It also allows them to invest in their home to improve it, to put it, I remember walking through Wingspread and looking at, people already were investing in, ductless heat pumps, mini splits, really improving the quality of the homes. As other people spoke, the landscaping, everything is really, really great. They would lose all of that if the parks were converted. So I'm really thrilled that this is actually stabilizing that. I'm very interested as well in this path towards resident-owned communities. One of the speakers spoke about that. My in-laws participated 30 years ago in a mobile home park conversion for resident-owned community in New York State. It's a really important path forward. It means that it takes a lot of work to get done. So I'm really hopeful that we can actually, go along that path once at such time when the owners want to sell. So I'm thrilled to make the motion to approve this ordinance. And thank you to Brandon and your team and all of the many people that worked to put this together.
Councillor Bloom.
Yeah, thank you. I'll keep it brief. I appreciate everything Councillor Kaplan said and so eloquently. It is a long time coming. I'm glad that it's here. I'm happy for all of you. It is not lost on me, excuse me, as a low-income worker, that the most likely path to homeownership is probably in one of your parks, and I hope to join you one day in that. And then lastly, I understand the concerns from the owners not feeling like they had enough notice, but I would just offer the suggestion to pay closer attention to your community instead of your bank account.
Further discussion? Councillor Hansen.
Again, just gratitude to staff and the community. As one of our speakers said, this is going to potentially pave the pathway for other communities in the state, and that's heartwarming as well. So I will be supporting this 110%, and thank you all, especially from the state down and the bottom up. And this is where we meet in the middle.
Councillor Duquesne.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank everyone who came out and spoke, and if you didn't speak, I still see your support in the audience, so thank you so much. I remember when this came in front of us. Brandon, thank you for keeping us compliant. I am a neighbor to Wingspread. I'm across the street. And so Wingspread, somebody mentioned earlier how we all work together and you're great neighbors. You are, and I feel like we need more communities like Wingspread. So I'm glad to see that this is moving forward. It took long enough, but it is moving forward. I supported 100%, and I'm glad to see us being able to secure 154 homes. So for that, I'm grateful. Thank you. I support it.
Councillor Sherrill.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Brandon. And thanks for everybody that showed up and shared your story about your housing. And I asked yesterday during a study session in length about how this ordinance change would positively affect our residents in our community. And it wasn't a cost savings that stood out. What it really was one word, and it was security. And when I heard that, I was pretty convinced that although this isn't perfect and I don't like everything about it, there's a few things in here that I don't think are clear and objective. There's some discriminatory things I think that are maybe could be ironed out a little bit more, and I need to say those before I support this. And one of them is it's hard to understand how parks can limit the ownership type and not have the availability to have rental housing, and it's ownership only occupancy. There are a few little things that I didn't love, but the security piece was enough to get me on board, and I will be supporting this. And thank you so much for showing up. There's a lot of people here that came and poured their heart out, and I do appreciate the gentleman that was on Zoom, but I didn't see anybody else representing the other side, and that carries weight with me for my vote. Thank you.
Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'll be even more brief because I have more to say further down the line in some of the later ordinances. But just to set the stage here, I just want to say up front that I aggressively support what we're trying to do here. And again, we'll speak a little bit down the line to some of the tweaks in there that cause me some worry relative to protecting tenants as best we can. So we'll get into that in probably 5 or 10 minutes, but I just wanted to say right now, right here, that this is absolutely the right direction of what we're trying to do.
I am so glad to be here this evening. It has been a while. We've been working on this for a while, and the community has been coming out and expressing their concern and their need for this change for a while. Local government never moves as fast as we would like it to. But it moves carefully, it moves diligently, and I think and it takes a lot of work to figure out how to make something like this work within our existing structure and our existing policies. So thank you, Brandon, and your team, and thank you to everyone who participated in the survey and helped to shape this this set of ordinances. I spent the last year of my high school time, I lived in a mobile home park with my mother. And she continued to live there until she passed. And if she had had to suddenly move 15, 20 years down the line, it would have destabilized. I don't even know what we would have done. With the kids, we were all working to support her. And she was able to stay in her home largely because of her neighbors and because of the sense of belonging that she felt in that space. And so I very much understand what goes on, even though I'm not a member of your neighborhoods, and I appreciate what that brings to the larger community. So I'm just so pleased to be here this evening and having us work through these ordinances. If there are no further discussions, roll call please, Alyssa.
Sherrill?
Yes.
Dale?
Yes.
Bloom?
Yes.
Kaplan?
Yes.
Duquesne?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, we move on now to ordinance number 3297.
So with that ordinance passed, these next two ordinances, 3297 and 3298, are really assigning that newly created manufactured home park zone to specific properties. So the properties within the city limits, as I mentioned before, Wingspread and the Tolman Creek manufactured home parks would be newly designated as manufactured home park zones. So that is an adoption of the map as an official map of the city.
Questions, Councillor Bloom?
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. I was hoping you could, provide some background information, detail of why the Planning Commission decided not to include the Upper Pines Mobile Home Park and the Ashland RV Park.
Yeah, so the Upper Pines Park is currently C1 zoned and within a climate-friendly area overlay. So that designation affords it considerably more development potential, essentially up to 5-story construction, mixed use, commercial downstairs, residential upstairs. And so the recognition of that existing overlay that was just applied was identified to recognize that the preservation of the park, although protected under the manufactured home park zone ordinance 3296, as far as relocation, that park could be closed. So I think the intention of removing it from a designated zone both was in recognition that applying an 18 dwelling unit per acre limit through the manufactured home park was actually a reduction in the current zoning allowance for it, so could constitute a takings. As far as the property at 278 Idaho Street, the RV park, there was a recognition that there are no manufactured dwellings on that park. There are a number of stick-built cottages and some recreational vehicles that are used as permanent housing, and that property is grandfathered in that way. However, those units are readily movable, so the concern that was articulated before the Planning Commission that within a manufactured home park, a number of older units could never be moved, and so a closure or conversion would trigger people losing their investment in those homes. That is not the case for 278 Idaho Street, as those units on there are usually there for 2 or 3 years and then relocate. So those was the thinking behind excluding both of those parks from consideration.
Thank you.
Councillor Duquesne. Oh, did we have any other questions of staff? Alyssa, has anyone signed up, or I opened the public hearing. Alyssa, has anyone signed up to speak to us on this ordinance? I close the public hearing. If there are no further questions of staff, the floor is open for a motion. Councillor Duquesne?
I move to approve the first reading of ordinance number 3297, amending the Ashland zoning map to establish the manufactured home park zone as presented.
Is there a second? Councillor Duquesne?
Enough said.
Councillor Kaplan?
Same, enough said.
Further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Hanson,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Sherrill.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, we move on now to ordinance number 3298.
Similar to adopting a new zoning map? Pardon me. So similar to adopting a new zoning map, ordinance 3298 adopts a new comprehensive plan designation for manufactured home parks and provides that map changes in the official map of the city. And so on the map before you, you see 4 sites that are identified, the 2 that were just rezoned under 3297, and 2 parks that are currently outside the city limits, but within the urban growth boundary, to have this comprehensive plan designation so that when they annex into the city, they can continue their use as manufactured home parks. I think this is particularly relevant in terms of some of the testimony that was provided of the Siskiyou Park, in which they were previously identified as an E1 employment zone. And so we're given the directive that expansion of an existing park was not consistent with the comprehensive plan, and as such would have had to have an employee use. Through the redesignation of that site as a manufactured home park, that conversation would be different subsequent to adoption of this ordinance, because that would be, an expansion of that park would be consistent with the underlying comp plan. So a little additional information there.
Questions of staff? Okay, I open the public hearing. Alyssa, has anyone signed up to speak to us on this ordinance? I close the public hearing. If there's no further discussion or questions, I open the floor for a motion. Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve first reading of ordinance number 3298, amending the Ashland Comprehensive Plan map to establish the manufactured home park designation as presented.
Is there a second? Was there a second?
Second.
Councillor Dale.
No, thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Sherrill. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Duquesne.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. And now we are to ordinance number 3306.
So ordinance 3336 or 3306 would add a new chapter, chapter 10.116 to our Ashland Municipal Code. So this is outside of land use. The 3 preceding ordinances all relate to land use. This section establishes standards related to manufactured home park sale, closure, conversion, and tenant protections, including notice requirements, opportunity to purchase provisions, relocation assistance standards, relocation plan review procedures, and anti-harassment provisions. And as has been noted, noticing requirements to housing staff of the city and enforcement provisions. Some key changes in this ordinance. Well, first of all, there currently is no ordinance that provides such protections, but the protections outlined within the ordinance are to require a 180-day notice of a park sale. And, I can speak to some of those recommendations. Also, the time for residents, essentially that 180-day period is a reflection of discussions that occurred before the Housing and Human Services Committee and the Planning Commission, as well as the Management Advisory Committee working on this to provide ample time for residents to organize and explore resident-owned communities and that opportunity to purchase by park residents. And it also establishes local resident protection measures, largely mirrored after the existing chapter 10.116 in Ashland, or 115 in Ashland Municipal Code, which relates to tenant protections for condominium conversions. So those are some of those established, but when this went to the Planning Commission, and I can move through these quickly because you've already addressed some of these ordinances. The Planning Commission, in reviewing this, they did forward the ordinance to the City Council for consideration this evening, together with comments, and recommended that the City Attorney's Office review prior to adoption. So they were not recommending that this be adopted this evening, but there be an opportunity for the City Attorney to review a number of provisions. The Commission did note that they felt that this ordinance supported resident protection objectives, and the extension of notice of park sales was something to support. They requested clarification on notice requirements, duration of the notice period, essentially whether the 180 days, although ample, whether a lesser period might be sufficient. They also identified some key terminology for the legal department to look at. One provision, for instance, noted that a purchase and sale agreement being executed would start the clock for that 180 days, and they felt that that should likely be changed to tendered as to align it with contract law. Lastly, the Commission raised potential state law preemption concerns and wanted our city council to, our legal counsel to review those terms, ensure that the ordinance as presented to council for final adoption is in compliance with state law. I think there was also opportunities identified by the legal office to streamline the ordinance, essentially looking at duplications of state law within that ordinance, and in lieu of restating those, reference existing state law. So I think that is what is before you this evening.
Questions of staff? Councillor Hanson?
Thanks, Mayor. Brandon, would you get me up to speed as to why we have 4 ordinances before us, 3 have unanimous support and we feel are ready to go forward, but this 4th is not quite fully baked? Could you give us a little timeline, maybe help?
In terms of timeline for coming back to council with this ordinance being revised?
No, I'm just curious why legal review hasn't been fully baked on this, and has the industry group not been noticed properly, and now they need to catch up? Is that why we had some testimony to that regard, or is this standard? Or are we having to outsource to specialty legal, or help me understand why we're not?
So the development of
fully baked on
this ordinance was in part through staff and our consultants, 3J Consulting. However, our legal department taking a look at it, they did provide a summary of concerns to the Planning Commission for their evaluation at their last hearing. And so I do think that legal counsel would like a greater opportunity to take a deeper dive into it. As far as notice, it was developed in process with the other 4 ordinances, but I do think that some of those industry professionals looking at the adoption of the land use provisions, as well as the changes proposed for tenant protections, did focus in on tenant protections because there's existing state law that stipulates, for instance, that the time period for a park sale notice to be provided to residents is 14 days, and subsequent to that, residents have another 15 days to provide a response. So that is already embedded in state law. Much of what is proposed in the land use side, the city of Portland is the only city that has adopted manufactured home park zone that I'm aware of in the state. So it may just be a new provisions that the city of Ashland might be newly proposing these tenant protections that exceed what the state law and what city of Portland provide.
Can I follow up on that? So help me understand, thank you for that context. So a yes vote is to continue consideration as legal reviews this. What would a no vote be?
So I think the council has options in terms of motion. You could move to approve the ordinance as presented. You could move to approve or move to essentially continue the public hearing on first reading to allow legal department opportunity to review and potentially modify the ordinance. You know, I would look to the legal department in terms of date certain. We put forth July 21st for an opportunity to review. And at that point, it could come back to the city council, or the council could move to deny this ordinance. So those three options are all afforded to you. It's staff recommendation to move to continue consideration of the ordinance based on the feedback that we've received both from the legal department and planning commission, and essentially bring it back on July 21st and direct staff to return with any revisions or recommendations to the ordinance at that time.
Thank you.
Councillor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I appreciate that, Brandon. And just to rehash some of the discussion that came up last night, because we went through this pretty thoroughly, and I know some folks weren't able to attend. But one of the things that we talked about last night was, especially with 3J, was relative to the time. And I think one of the things that had come up was as we've seen, and as I've done my research with this, and several other states have been very aggressive with this, as they should, found that longer didn't actually equal better. In fact, it hurt. And so I think what we had discussed, and maybe you can elaborate on some things for consideration that the planning staff and 3J, was something along the lines of like a base time frame of like 90 to 120, but also integrating more specific tools such as a pause in that timeline when something that is outside of tenant control happens, where we would put that on hold, so it would effectively be longer, but only in the right places. And that so I'll stop with that. Does that sound about right? Because when we asked that, the planning had kicked that to city council, and as a liaison to the planning commission, there was quite a bit of hesitancy when this was talking about that I observed, and I think the final vote obviously was, but with the commentary, if you go back and listen, was let's kick this to the city council so they can kick it back for us. I think they were a little bit worried, but staff seems to tend to agree.
Yeah, I think that you're right in your recollection of last night's discussion, as well as the concern that 180 days, if not being utilized by the park residents to make a good faith offer in the formation of a resident-owned community, really is just a delay on the sale. And that isn't what it's intended to be. We reached out to CASA of Oregon, which is a nonprofit organization that formulates resident-owned communities. And we're fortunate that they participated in a management advisory committee meeting in which we were able to get their feedback. They'd stipulated that the existing state law timeline was inadequate, but that a 90-day period as a minimum would be, if everybody was moving forward with the desire to acquire a park and do all the due diligence, would be sufficient. And so I think that it increased over time, because if 90 days is sufficient, maybe 120 days builds in a little flexibility in terms of if there were delays. And then again, it increased at 180. So I think that if the council had direction on what timeline you were looking at and directed legal to determine the viability of that, I think that would be useful this evening. I also wanted to note that, at some point the timeline becomes untenable. If, for instance, and this is just a hypothetical, that if the timeline was set at 3 years, that is not a good faith period of time for which park residents could form a ROC. They would wait until the final 120 days and then begin the process. So I think that the expectation of the chapter 10.116 was in order to codify a time period so that both the park residents and the park owners would know what was anticipated during that notice of sale portion.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I appreciate that, Brandon. And yeah, I'll say it again, as I did last night, even with more emphasis, that 14 days is woefully inadequate and quite honestly embarrassing at the state level to have a number that's small. So I appreciate that context, Brandon, and the diligence put in by staff to consider that. Because again, this is not a matter of trying to kill this. It is a matter of getting this right so that we do not unintentionally make it worse. Personally, I think 30 to 60 days is too soon. 90 is that spot with other things. But can you also speak to the other component that we discussed last night, which was the requirements and the wording within the ordinance relative to the relocation and so forth? Because I think we landed on the fact that again, we could have unintentionally caused unintended consequences relative to the ambiguity of that word, and I think we need to take another crack at that. Can you expand on that?
I think ambiguity is the right word, that the ordinance being put forth does include terms such as a property owner or the city may require a plan, and that was brought up at last night's meeting as discretionary term. That is it staff that decides when a plan be provided for relocation, or is there some more clear and objective standard? Or should the term just be shall, that a plan shall be required and that a more clarified list of what that plan contains provide? So again, with council direction, I think that could come back to council for consideration. I did want to note that the Planning Commission did debate this issue with some a matter of time, but ultimately the Chapter 10 is not in the land use code, and so doesn't fall within their typical purview. But the legal department obviously is probably best suited to make those revisions and bring back.
Thank you.
Councillor Kaplan?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I've got a couple of questions. One first for you, Brandon. Last night I asked a question about the conversion clause in here, notice of conversion, and it seemed I was puzzled by it. And I think you clarified today, actually. It's something maybe you clarified last night too, and I just didn't understand. But certainly today I understood that this ordinance applies outside of mobile home park zones. So those two other mobile home parks, manufactured home parks in our community. I didn't see a definition. What is a manufactured home park? So how do will we recognize
it's under a state determination, it's 4 or more manufactured homes on a single parcel.
4 or more manufactured homes on a single parcel. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So, and I appreciate that. I was not clear last night. So one of the values of a study session is both for council to get information. It's for me to get questions and go back and take a look at how I responded. So I did want to clarify that the manufactured home park zone applies to 2 properties. The Chapter 10.116 applies to any existing manufactured home park within the city, be it in a zone or not.
So that's a really important protection. So thanks for clarifying that. I think it extends beyond that. My other question really is both for you and for our city attorney. Just trying to understand. Clearly we want to get this right before we approve it. There's a number of things that it says in your suggestion about how to move forward is to continue this until July 21st in order to allow staff to make some revisions. I was just wondering what the process is for making those revisions, both with your staff and also with the city attorney. It doesn't sound like the Planning Commission is going to be involved. It's not really their expertise, this kind of code, municipal code. It's not land use code. So what is the process that we're going to be seeing? That's for the both of you. And then I just want to make sure that July 1st is a feasible date, that we can really have it.
July 21st.
What did I say? July 21st. Thank you.
So I'll likely defer to our city attorney in terms of what the process would be. I know planning staff would be of any assistance we could provide in terms of the intention of the ordinance and clarify those provisions. In speaking with the assistant city attorney, they did provide a summary review of what areas they would like to look at, and we provided in those packets. So with that, I'll.
Yeah, I think the process is pretty underway. We communicated with Brandon, it was, late last week or the week before, or early last week or the week before. And I think we've highlighted all the issues, and it's making sure that what we do won't affect the greater work of the Planning Commission and the Housing Department. So I think we just want to make sure that any edits we make while bringing things into, I think, one, clarify that they're in alignment with ORS. There's a couple areas where we need to maybe you just remove or do some checking on. But I think we've got it down to a list of like 7 or 8 items that need to be addressed. So I think it's very feasible.
A follow-up? Yeah, so there is this question about the 180 days or 14 days, and I'm just wondering that seems to be a judgment rather than a legal question. So I'm wondering what's the process for coming up to a decision on that, a recommendation on that?
I just need to interject. So we have a timing issue. What I need to do is open the public hearing for this ordinance. So I open the public hearing. Alyssa, has anyone signed up to speak to us on this ordinance?
No.
I close the public hearing. Johan, you can respond. If you could respond to Councilor Kaplan.
Can you repeat the question?
So my question was that there's been some considerable discussion about whether 180 days or 14 days or something in between. What's the process for coming up with a reasoned recommendation for that so we can consider it on July 21st?
Yeah, and I think Brandon and I came up with a lower recommendation when we briefly discussed it than the 180. That first time I saw that number was when the final thing, I got a proposal, I think, of 120 days originally when I first started seeing this outlined. And I believe the only other district that did it was Bellingham, Washington. Is that Bellevue?
Yeah, and Bellingham has 120 days.
So we had some concern about the increase and if that could be construed as interfering with the business contractor or some sort of create some sort of liability for the city. So we wanted to reach out and see if any other cities had expanded on it and if they'd done any research into it. I agree it's mostly a judgment call, but I also think that we'll probably bring back something a little lower.
Thank you.
Councilor Sherrill.
Thank you, Mayor. My main question was what was the timeline for clear and objective standards, and it sounds like that later part of July. But to the city attorney, what kind of risk exposure would we have, and is there any case law that supports that we would be defending an easy fight if we have potential park owners that are saying the city is overstepping their bounds when it comes to the ambiguity of the language as currently written? I mean, I know there was some hesitation in the memo originally. What are your fears? Like, what's our worst case?
I don't know that I could predict what that lawsuit looks like. I think you could make a couple of different arguments against it. I think one would be a implied preemption, like the state said this, you're going too far. Their doctrine should control. As far as liability, I think you'd be looking at some sort of tort or business contract interference, but it's a situation that I don't think has come up. So,
thank you,
Councilor Hansen.
Thank you. I appreciate the reference to Bellingham's 120-day example, but we also learned that Portland has an ordinance in place as well. Do we have any data there that we can lean on as another example? I have two questions, but that's my first one.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Portland's tenant protection ordinance. I know they have a manufactured home park zone, but we can see what information they have. I also know that the city of Eugene has established greater tenant notification process for park closures or conversions, so a little different than a sale. But we can look at both of those in working with the legal department.
Okay, and second question is, wing spread seems to be our larger example that we can look to locally. How many spaces, units are within wing spread again?
Correct.
160.
Yeah.
16. I'm sorry, 16. Yeah, that's interesting. I just went traveling with a group of 11. It was 4 families. I mean, just like trying to figure out where we were going to dinner and how we were going to pay was like a nightmare. So I don't know. In the subjectivity portion of this, it seems that should be a consideration, and I don't know what that math would be, but organizing 16 different families to come together to do something
Yeah, I think
is something relevant.
Yeah, it's 116 families, and a requirement, I believe, for the formation of a resident-owned community is to get a 51% of the residents to participate. And that participation also includes recognizing that acquiring the property could be an investment also. So that is undoubtedly something that is not done overnight.
Right.
It takes careful consideration from each household and collectively.
Thank you.
Councilor Bloom.
Yeah, thanks. Question for legal. So I'm curious how I get the preemption that the state says, hey, it's 15 days, whatever, 14 days. But I'm curious how that works with the housing production strategy methodology that the state has developed and is in ORS that states that we have to protect existing housing. And this is basically rules to do that. So could there be an argument to say that, hey, because you want us to do this, you can't preempt us on the 14 days? I know it's not.
I mean,
an
maybe,
easy-
but I'd have to look closer at it too, because there's another section that refers to closures that prohibits local governments from interfering with what the state has done. So I
Right.
just want to make sure that we're not putting something into a new code that's been so well thought out just to have it.
Totally. Totally. Thank you.
So question for legal. We often, well, at least sometimes, pass an ordinance on first reading with changes or direction to staff to clarify. Sometimes that involves having staff ask questions and bringing information back to the council on second reading. Is there anything about this particular circumstance that would, in the questions that we have in front of us, that would make passing it this evening, maybe with some amendments, any kind of is there any sort of consideration around that because of the nature of the questions here?
If Brandon wants to read it after the amendments, because we'd have to read all the amendments.
Yeah, so that is really the primary issue, is we'd need clear direction from council on each specific amendment that you would be suggesting. Legal and staff would develop that new ordinance, and likely it would have to be read in full verbatim in order to implement that, because we could no longer adopt by reading of title only if it was at second reading. Further, that would eliminate the potential for you to receive additional public comment on the revisions provided. And so our recommendation to a continuance and revisions to the ordinance to come back to you would then come back at a public hearing, which would allow, at first reading and public hearing, which would allow public testimony on the changes proposed.
Okay. Any other questions of staff? Okay, the floor is open for a motion. Councilor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to continue consideration of ordinance number 3306, adding chapter 10.116 to the Ashland Municipal Code, establishing notice of sale, opportunity to purchase, relocation standards, and tenant protections for manufactured home parks residents to July 21st, 2026, and direct staff to return with any revisions recommended following further legal review.
Councilor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this is something that, Mayor, I couldn't agree with you more when you said earlier that the government doesn't move as fast as we'd like sometimes. And you talked about, being careful and being diligent. And what I'm hoping is that there is a bit of grace and patience that is afforded to this council as we actually try to work through this to get this right. And I really appreciate Brandon for pointing out the very important facet that is another public hearing that comes with that first reading. That is so important for you all to speak again to your thoughts, as opposed to us trying to rush through this to a second reading. This is kind of a go slow to go fast. And that's one of the things that we want to do, is we want to get these right. And it is critical that we don't have loopholes or ambiguities that actually make it worse for tenant rights, even despite trying to do the right thing. So I am very much looking forward to passing this on July 21st. I want to make that abundantly clear. But at the same time, we have to nail this and get it close. So that's why I offered the motion to continue. It's not a vote to delay or to not have this go through or any other kind of tactic like that. This is really to make it even better. Thank you.
Councilor Hanson.
Yeah, I absolutely concur with Councilor Dale's statement there. And I think that everything that has been moving forward thus far is done proper with the right heart, if you will. And now getting legal involved to nail it, recognizing that bringing a community together to do something this big really is going to take a lot of time and effort. So the number should be high and also realistic. But I believe that this is all going to be done in the right spirit, and I fully support this motion.
Further discussion, Councillor Sherrill?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm just a little concerned about unintended consequences as we kind of iron this out and get more clear and objective to this. And I can't stop asking myself, like, what can we do as a compromise here? And I just see the downward pressure at the state level, which is good. It's a positive thing to cap lower income, to cap cash flow of the park owner, and then also to potentially put a burden on a sale of somebody that, you know, was spoke of earlier of wanting to throw a sledgehammer at. It seems like it would be, we might be getting in our own way. If there's such an awful owner, why would we not want them to be able to disposition that asset? And I just keep coming back to, you guys have gotten so organized as a community. It's so awesome to see that. I would just love to see you be actionary and put together an offer and work with the state resources we have and not be reactionary. Well, if it's 14 days or 90 days or 120 days to do due diligence on a property of that size, like I would encourage any park residents within these zones that we're currently creating to be well ahead of that curve. And the organization I've seen tonight, like how can we help you buy that place? So when I look through these amendments, that's what really jumps out at me. And not that I don't support the protections that I know you deserve. I just, at some point, we also have to realize that there's a lot of downward pressure on ownership. And what we're showing here is that you don't want to buy a park in Ashland. You don't want to build a park in Ashland. And it's going to be hard to sell a park in Ashland. And I just have fear that the end user over time will potentially pay more or have less infrastructure or less upgrades. Hopefully not out of vindictive ownership, but potentially. And we've seen that at the state level when it comes to a couple of different things. So that's all I would add as I get ready to make this vote. Thanks.
Further discussion? Councillor Kaplan?
Yeah, I'm going to support this delay. But I take Councillor Sherrill's points also to heart. I think really it is true that it takes time to put together a resident-owned community. More than 14 days, probably more than 60 or 90 days, really getting a head start. Again, this is not just about one very organized community, which is Wingspread. Probably the most organized community in town, not just manufactured home park, but the most organized community in this city. It's about other manufactured home parks as well that are not as organized, and I think that's really the challenge that we face as a community, is to helping all of our neighbors to really be prepared to be able to make an offer, when that time comes. I think there are a lot of good things in these first three ordinances that we approved. I think there's a lot of good things in this as well. And I think it's important to, make sure that we do it right, but at the same time, not take our eyes off the prize, which is really helping all of our communities, manufactured home park communities, organized so that they can be a resident-owned community. Because I think it's it's worth the effort.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Duquesne?
Yes.
Kaplan?
Yes.
Bloom?
Yes.
Dale?
Yes.
Sherrill?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. We are going to take a short recess. Councillors, please be back at 8:18 by this clock. We still have 10 agenda items, so we're going to get started right away at 8:17. Our agenda at the Ordinances, Resolutions, and Contracts section. We start with approval of a construction contract with Knife River Materials for the Ashland Municipal Airport Pavement Rehabilitation Project. Jordan.
Thank you. Before you all tonight, as our contract review board, is a contract for the pavement rehabilitation at the airport for roughly around $1.2 million. This is almost entirely grant-funded project, and we have our Public Works Director here tonight if you all have any questions about the contract process or the project itself.
Questions of staff? Councilor Sherrill?
Thank you, Mayor. I was geeking out looking through the bid sheets, and one number jumped out at me a couple of times, and it was the cost for FOD management. And maybe you could just briefly tell me what that is and what that is going to be responsible for.
So that's foreign object debris, and that's any material that gets on the pavement surface that's loose, that could be moved into an engine or propeller or the airplane itself. So on these pavement preservation projects, especially the runway getting slurry sealed, which is a small fine aggregate being placed on the runway in an emulsion, they spend a lot of time brooming and sweeping that material up after it sets because there will be a lot of loose material left. And so they want to make sure that all of that gets removed. The general construction activities themselves also can kick up debris, on tracking from, dirt to asphalt areas. And there's a lot of vegetation and granite areas that material, can be tracked onto all the pavement surfaces. And so each section, the contractor has estimated the time and response necessary for sweeping and brooming and cleaning that debris off those pavement sections based on the work activity they're doing in that area.
And based on the taxiways that they're working on and the prices, that those were all reasonable to you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's one of the very important safety precautionary things that you would do, to keep anything from impacting an airplane landing or taking off, and having any sort of debris that gets sucked up into the engine or aircraft itself.
Okay, any further questions? The floor is open for a motion. Councilor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve a construction contract with Knife River in the amount of $1,025,144.80 for the Ashland Municipal Airport Runway and Taxi Lane Rehabilitation and Reconstruction Project, Phase 2 construction, and authorize the city manager to sign the final agreement.
Is there a second?
Second.
Councilor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just briefly, thank you again, Scott, for, $1.25 million that everything, all but $7,580 out of the self-funded airport fund will take care of all of this. And I appreciate Councilor Sorrell looking out for our safety out there, because other than deer crossing the runway, which is a thing, the second thing is this FOD. It is an extreme safety issue. So thanks for taking care of it and looking out for us, Scott.
Councilor Sherrill?
No, thank you.
Further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Dale.
Yes.
Motion pass.
Okay. We are now to, thank you, Scott. We are now to approval of a construction contract with Knife River Materials for the Hunter Park Tennis Court Rehabilitation Project, number 000864. Hi, Rachel.
Thank you, Mayor Graham. Rachel Dials, Interim Parks Director for Ashland Parks and Recreation. There's a request tonight to enter into a contract with Knife River Materials for the rehabilitation of the Hunter Park tennis courts. This project is budgeted in the current CIP. We received one bid, and it was from Knife River Materials. This project is also partially grant funded. The matching funds would be about 60% of the cost of the project. The bid came in at $643,340, and the money right now is in the CIP, Park CIP, and requesting approval tonight.
Questions? Councilor Hanson.
Interim Director Dials, thank you so much. We recently had a tennis tournament out there at Hunter Park. Do you have any idea how many people showed up for that?
Was that the youth, Stevenson Union
Yeah.
youth one? I can't remember what Eric said, that like maybe 50 kids?
Yeah, I heard there
Yeah.
was like 30 different matches out there.
Mhm.
Unbeknownst to me, who's not a tennis person, there's a thriving tennis community here that wants to bring even more activity to the community and bring it up to a level that would generate more economic development, livability, sustainability, draw people in as like a regional thing. So I'm just curious. My question is that how long has this been in the process? Like we're here to the contract.
Over 2 years, I think, that
Wow.
we've been talking about it, and since like 2023-ish, yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Well, I
we've had
just
public meetings and, debated whether or not to include pickleball, versus tennis and things like that. So we've had lots of public meetings about this.
as a parks liaison, it's been interesting to see that the two communities, work together and also battle it out between the pickleballers and the tennis players. But I appreciate the word thus far, and thank you for tenacity is my point, that we're here, and I will totally be supporting this, especially a grant-funded help get this pushed when it's already in the CIP budget. So thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, the floor is open for a motion. Councillor Kaplan.
I move to approve the construction contract with Knife River Materials for the Hunter Park Tennis Courts Rehabilitation Project with a contract amount not to exceed $643,430. $643,430.
Is there a second? Second. Councillor Kaplan.
No, I'm glad to see it finally getting done. Thank you.
Councillor Sherrill. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Dale,
Yes.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Duquesne, Duquesne,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Sherrill. Motion pass.
Okay, we are now to approval of a construction contract with Outlier Construction LLC for the East Main Street Community Park Phase 1 park improvements.
So the next two contracts are both related to East Main Park, and as you recall, they were split into two different bids. So the first one is, this one is for the park improvements. Phase 1 includes a restroom, parking lot, bike pump track, dog park, landscaping, perimeter paths, things like that. The invitation to bid was released on May 4th and was open until the 28th of May. There were received a total of 4 bids. Low bid came in from Outlier Construction at $2,130,151.66. The project is currently budgeted within the CIP, and this project is also grant funded through the state as well. So looking for approval tonight. And this, I will just say that East Main Park has been in process since about 2017 with the sale of the YMCA park. This is a replacement park for that neighborhood. And we've had, during COVID, I think was when we had probably 6 to 7 public meetings. We've recently revisited the public meetings for East Main Park, so we've had tons of public input on this. So it's a really important project for the community.
Okay, questions of staff? Councillor Hanson?
Thank you again, Rachel. Appreciate your tenacity here, moving this forward, and we're finally now at this phase here. Something unique about this park is that it unlocks this last, park within a half mile. Could you speak briefly to that, or could you just tell us about that? How?
Sure, we have, so basically in our comp plan, it's a park within a quarter mile of every resident in Ashland. And so this would complete that for the community.
And thank you. And it's interesting and cool to note that this part of the south end of Ashland has the highest density of like low-income housing, with more being built currently. Correct. And then potential of another 7 to 10 acres it's for sale, annexed back into the city for even more potential to, because of the street improvement, it will help the developers for those future developments kind of pave the way, if you will, for the street improvements that makes it all connected. So in addition to the park being, equity for that last little piece of a park within every quarter mile, it's also going to help potentially with affordable housing development along East Main as we get closer and closer to connecting Walker Street to Tolman Creek. Yeah, and again, you said that there's been a number of public meetings, and I think I've been to them all, and I've heard dozens of families, kids.
Counselor, do you have a question?
Dog walkers. Yeah, I do have a question.
Okay.
I do have a question. How long has that part been going on? Because I've been hearing, community members with dogs that were like, I'm so glad to finally have a place to throw a Frisbee for my dog in South Ashland. How long have those public meetings been going on?
I think the first public meeting we had on East Main Park was before COVID, so probably 2018, 2019.
And another question, if you don't mind. So when did we get the grant? There's a $1 million grant in there that really helps kick this thing up in terms of its viability.
So it's currently, we have until the end of this year to use the grant. We will be asking for an extension on the grant for into next year to be able to accommodate the grant. So we're already going to be behind with the approval tonight. Because the first 3 months will be park and public improvements, and then we'll go into park phase after that.
Yeah,
so that'll be about 9 months.
I understand we had some staff changes there and stuff. If we move this forward, will we be able to get it done by the end of the year? It seems like it's a really tight timeline.
We won't be able to get it done by the end of the year. We'll have to ask for an extension, but we're hoping to have substantial completion by next July.
And that's critical. Thank you.
Counselor Duquesne.
Thanks, Mayor. So I had a question regarding what was brought up in several of these meetings about the opening to East Main Park. And it's my understanding that the opening will be pedestrians on Abbott, but the main entrance on East Main, is that correct?
That's correct.
Working with ODOT, is the speed limit going to slow down? Because it's already been slowed down about a couple of blocks where the 40 miles starts later on. So can you tell me what that's going to look like?
I don't think there is a plan to slow down traffic at this point. We did do I think there was some traffic studies done within the time frame of the discussions about this park, and I don't think that was something that we came to.
But it is going to, the main entrance will be
On East Main.
on East Main.
Yes.
And then if I can really quick
Yeah, but I think it's important for us to keep in mind that our role tonight is a contract review board. And so it's about following, did staff follow the procedure for identifying who would receive the contract? So given that we have 10 items on our agenda still, I just want us to be careful of how deep we go into the particulars of the project, given the limited scope that we have for our decision tonight. But if you have a question related to the contract, then.
Okay, I did. Related to this contract, we have, working with them, it's about $2 million for phase one, right?
The total for phase one with the park and the public improvements would be just about 2.5 million.
Do we know how much phase two will be?
We don't know. We haven't done any estimating on that at all.
Counselor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Rachel. I know there's been a lot of work done on this. A couple questions is, do you happen to know on this particular contract how long the bid is valid through? That would be question number one.
I just tried to corner our parks manager, and we'd have to go back and look. I'm not aware of how long the bid is going to be good for.
Okay, because one of the things, and I appreciate it, and I know a lot of work has been done in capital and so forth, and it's come in under bid and so forth, and I appreciate that. But one of the things I think I'd still concerning to me is that we still, especially from talking about this since 2017 and so forth, and I understand there's been changes in the department and so forth, a lot of stuff going on. But one of the things that I think as we come up to some very, very difficult decisions coming up is relative to operations across the city, and parks is in general fund too, is how we ensure operational stability to this. So because we're not sure about that yet, do you have any, and I know we hadn't had a chance to talk about this briefly, so I understand if you might not have an answer, but just in case you might, is when we might be able to look at, or when we might be able to see, so we can see bigger picture relative to operations, because it's great if we have the money to build it. It would be a tragedy to have it closed because we can't operate it.
Yeah. I mean, I think coming up with an operational plan for phase 1 would be fairly easy to do.
Meaning within a month?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, Jordan, go ahead.
We have just we're in the process of hiring a position during this current biennium right now that's going to cover phase 1 of East Main Park. So we feel confident that the current staffing levels that we have, we would be able to maintain that park.
Yeah, and I would just like to caution against potentially any delays on this contract, given that it's grant funded, that has a deadline to it. I would not want to delay starting implementation of this project if we are going to move forward with the project as a whole. Be my one thing of caution, given we're already pushing up against deadlines.
Okay. Any other questions of staff? Oh, yes, Councilor Hanson.
Yeah, one more, Rachel. I understand that we're a little under budget on this as far as
Yeah, so the entire project within the CIP, when we looked at the costs, we were about like 3.2 is what was put in the CIP, and the entire project is coming in about a little over 2.5 for the public improvements and the park improvements together.
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Oh, are there any other questions?
Excuse me, Mayor, if I can, really quick.
A question? Yep, Councilor Duquesne.
So if I can be clear, you said the entire thing is coming. It's not the entire, it's just phase 1, correct?
Phase 1.
Thank you.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no more questions, the floor is open for a motion. Councilor Hanson.
Going to make a motion. Thank you. It's my honor to move to approve the construction contract with Outlier Construction LLC for Phase 1 of the East Main Street Community Park improvements with a contract amount not to exceed $2,130,151.66.
Is there a second? Councilor Hanson.
Yes, congratulations to the community to get this far. I hope we can take this over the finish line today so we can start walking our dogs, riding our bikes, and getting closer to walking to school along those paved streets. Thank you.
Councilor Kaplan?
Yeah, I support that. Congratulations on bringing this across the finish line. Our job here is as the contract review board, and I appreciate that. There were a number of bids, and you went through it and awarded to the lowest bidder. Came in under budget, so that's also really good. And that time is of the essence. That we are running up against some deadlines, so I'm hoping that we can really get that extension, but then really deliver this to our community by the early next year.
Are there further discussion? Councilor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that, and I understand what we're trying to do. I still am and I appreciate the good work relative to the capital stuff. I struggle with the fiscal responsibility of understanding that we've had some time to figure out operations and again, and I know, Rachel, this isn't on you for stepping into this role, so I do appreciate the good work that you're doing, but that's one of those things, just as kind of the function of this body. This is a difficult one for me not to support, but I just want to understand the operations before I can go through it, even though we're acting as a contract board here. But thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the things that has struck me in the time, especially over this last 16 months or so, is that delays are particularly costly. That has shifted radically as we've had supply issues and tariffs and all sorts of things. So appreciate that this is coming in under budget or under estimates, and good to see this, good to see us at the point where we are at now and we're having this contract discussion. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Hanson,
Yes.
Duquesne,
No.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Dale,
No.
Sherrill.
Yes.
Motion pass.
Okay, we move on to the approval of a construction contract with Pilot Rock Excavation Incorporated for the East Main Street Community Park public improvements.
So this is the public improvement portion for East Main Park. The same bid solicitation, May 4th through May 28th. 3 bids were received. Low bid was Pilot Rock Excavation for $386,340. And this is currently budgeted within the park CIP and is also grant funded. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Councillor Hanson?
Thank you, Rachel. Again, I'm glad to see this have multiple bids, and a low bid with Pilot Rock is a great company to have a low bid with. They've done a lot of work with us. It was brought up before the street speeds, and we did a traffic study as part of this, and that was part of the money that we've spent thus far. And the Transportation Advisory Committees talked about it, and it seems like Director Flory said that there's an opportunity to go back and look at street speeds and all that. But my question is that as part of this contract with Pilot Rock, is the width of the street going to be changed, or is there going to be any kind of traffic calming already built into this, or is that to be determined?
I'm going to have Kevin come up really quick. Sorry.
Yeah, and I appreciate that the question being brought up,
Yeah.
Counselor, so that's why I ask now.
Good evening.
Thank you, Kevin.
Happy to be here. I don't believe there's any traffic calming without reviewing the design. It's mostly sidewalk and street improvements, storm drain. So I'd have to look at the design and get back to you on that.
Okay, fair enough. Jordan, sorry.
There we go, thank you. And just what's great about this project so far is we have our shared project manager between Public Works and Parks that's taking point on both of these projects. And so we'll also have Public Works strongly involved, particularly in the street improvements, which is one of their bread and butter topics. Right. And so look forward to that. Have more details come to you all if requested.
Thank you.
Any further questions of staff? Councillor Sherrill?
Yeah, I would have a question for the city manager based on the acting city manager, deputy city manager, sorry. You just kind of opened the door for questions as it pertained to infrastructure. When we're looking at these contracts, I'm going through this one currently and it says see drawings attached and I don't see them. But my concern is that as we're tearing up the improvements on the side of the road where there is a potential for a sewer line that is really a deciding factor on unlocking the normal neighborhood development. And so when I hear my colleagues talking about we're going to pave the streets and put in new sidewalks, all I'm thinking is like, oh my gosh, to do this right, we're going to have to tear all those up and put in either a gravity or a force main line down to East Main as a connection to part of the that south end of town. Was it ever discussed at any level for future upgrades, maybe putting pipe in the ground or anything like that?
Great. My understanding, and I would love to put the disclaimer of I will have our director Fleury come and correct me if I'm wrong in stating this. But yes, we have overlaid our other capital projects that are anticipated for development as we would do with any park, or I should say any development the city is working on. My understanding of the Norma neighborhood is that the sewer connection would come actually on the other side, closer to Walker, rather on the side closer to Tolman Creek, so that's not a complicating factor for this specific project.
Thank you.
Other questions of staff? Okay, the floor is open for a motion. Councillor Hanson?
Thank you. Again, I'm honored to move to approve the construction contract with Pilot Rock Excavation, Inc. for the East Main Street Community Park public improvements with a contract amount not to exceed $386,340.
Is there a second?
Second.
Councillor Hanson?
Thank you. I mean, again, this is more than just a sidewalk. This is equity to the south of Ashland and the future residents of South Ashland. And it's also an economic development driver. You know, I always say people don't come here for our streets, they come here for our parks. But without our streets and without our sidewalks, they're not going to come here. And my little kiddo lives half-time, you know, with his mom a couple blocks away, and this gets him safer to school and to the YMCA, as well as all those other kids and elderly and everybody else that lives down that side of town. So it's with a lot of honor and pride that I see more development in the south side of Ashland, that making it safer to get there and about and be healthy outside on our wonderful world-class park system. So thank you, staff, and thank you for rolling with all the punches that has been, you know, this part of the project. You know, oh, we have to build a sidewalk too? Yeah. And everything that goes with it. I don't want to just minimize it. So thank you all very much.
Councillor Sherrill? Didn't you second?
Nothing to add.
Okay, great. Councillor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think I said what I needed to say in the last one, and philosophically. On this one, though, people do come for our streets as well as our parks, too, and I think infrastructure is very important. I think Councillor Hansen's point to the synergies of this is well taken, and I'm willing to support this because of the tie-in, and again, under budget, and appreciate the work that went into the contracts for this and the bids, but because there is a tie to other facilities and infrastructure, and again, serving as a contract board, I'm willing to support this particular one.
Further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Hanson,
Yes.
Duquesne,
No.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Sherrill.
Yes.
Motion pass.
Thank you both. So we have some issues that have timeliness elements to them, and given our timing this evening, we're going to change the order in which we take the remaining agenda items. We're going to start with Resolution 2026-14 relating to solid waste management, as their request starts on July 1st. And then we are going to go to consideration of a temporary halt on city herbicide use, and then to the public meetings records policy question, development of a concept plan and management plan for the Madrone Ridge property, and if we have still time, we'll go back to the heritage tree item, and then back down to the utility bill fees. Right? So, and I'm not anticipating we're going to get all the way through that list, but Jordan, I've kept track of which direction we're going in. So we're going to start now with Resolution 2026-14 relating to solid waste management service rates and repealing Resolution number 2025-14. Jordan.
Thank you. So pursuant to our franchise agreement and our city code, as it comes to our solid waste collection franchise, General Manager Robert Long, please come join us. We have an opportunity to review and approve Recology's rate increase requests every year. There are parameters of which we are operating within to ensure that those rates fall within our agreements and our code. Those parameters are A, to allow them to increase by the CPI as a minimum, and B, to ensure that Recology is maintaining in between an 8 to 12% operating margin compared to their gross revenues. They have provided information to staff to show that they are meeting those requirements. And so I have invited tonight our General Manager, Robert Long from Recology, to share some more details.
Great. Yeah, if you could push that button in the front there, it'll turn red. There you go. Now you're live.
Perfect. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Mayor Graham, council members. I'm going to try and get through this as quick as possible in preservation for time for everybody. Jordan, I just hit Control L for the presentation, or?
We should. We'll pull it up over here.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. If not, I can just high level. Okay. So the presentation's the same we've done for the last couple of years. We come in, we present what we're doing in the community, what we're doing to improve our services. I guess what I would like to start with is, as far as improving services, Oh, okay, sorry. We have, sorry, let me go, getting a little jumbled. Okay, so RMA, we're in the middle of RMA. It's the Recycling Modernization Act. We have extended materials coming into the streams now that are being sent to REM, responsible end markets. We have the curbside glass collection. We're expanding on that a little bit more as well. We're still doing the mattress recycling. We still have the downtown Ashland depot. That has been going really well. We've added, some of you were able to attend for our new Pro Depot. We were very proud of that. We're actually adding and implementing another phase to that at the transfer station through CAA, involved with the RMA. That's going to enhance recycling efforts for harder to recycle commodities that we're facing today. Sorry. Jump through. So the bread and butter of everything that we're coming in here for, and probably the most important part to you guys, is why the ask. We're coming in for an 8.75, and what this does is this brings us back up to the bottom of our operating margin of 8%. And the biggest drivers of the ask for us is labor. We added 2 more headcount to service the community better, more efficiently, faster, especially with Oregon OSHA laws cracking down about drivers being on the road, heat conditions, and also noise. So we're trying to be faster, trying to be more efficient, trying to run a little less thin and stressing our drivers. Secondly, insurance and fuel, everybody has seen that. It has been through the roof. We've done our best, our absolute best to keep up with this. Best intentions have fell short and ended up increasing 13% this year. And then as far as when you look at our last 10 years of increases, I know 8.75 sounds like a lot. It is, I understand that. But whenever you look at our last 10 years of ask, we're below 4% when you average out our price increases. We're running at 3.9%. And when you look at the margin, we're running right there at that 8 to 9 3/4 section, not the high end of the margin. So we understand the economy. We understand that times are a little bit hard for everybody right now. So we're trying to be cautious of that, but we're trying to get back into that operating margin. Questions?
Questions? Councilor Sherrill.
Thank you, Mayor. We talked about this for a while, and you're the expert, or both of you are probably experts to answer this. The bear cart price difference on your price sheet, have we figured out how to mechanically open the lid, or does the driver have to still get out and put their finger in it, and that's why it costs so much more?
Unfortunately, yes, the driver still has to get out and manually open it. The reason why the cost is more is because the manufacturer's charging us more. So bear carts aren't something that are readily available. In fact, it's not used in most areas. Us here in Ashland kind of got to be the staple for that. So there's other companies reaching out, asking about our bear carts, what we're using, how they're working. Those bear carts are good. They come with a fair amount of challenges, though, including price.
Okay, yeah, I saw some of the new ones with the sleek top, and I thought, oh, maybe those ones they magnetically open when they get up to the truck or something.
Credit to the drivers.
Okay.
They're taking heat guns to them and kind of molding them a little bit more to make it seamless as possible.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Councilor Hanson.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming. I've seen the bear carts in my neighborhood. The driver bang them upside down and they pop open without the manual finger control. It's
force overrides.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, ingenuity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, as part of the increase, you referenced Dry Creek really being a big driver. But when I was at Earth Day celebration, the Ashland Climate Collaborative was demonstrating all the new recyclable materials that are state law.
Right.
So I'm curious, are all of those resources now available to the city of Ashland? Is that also part of what's driving the increase in prices?
Yes, the resources are available to Ashland. They've been in full effect for, I would say, positively a year now. It's not quite what's driving the price. What's driving the price when it comes to the RMA is labor hours associated with that. There is a section of funding that comes back to the community for the RMA, but it doesn't account for the increased labor hours for the team to do their audits and basically ensure that everything's pulled out of there like it's supposed to be.
Well, I think it's fair to say that part of what Ashland is getting from this price increase is more recyclability. I know so many people from other communities come here and they're like, "You're throwing that away?" I'm like, well, yeah, we can't recycle it here, but a lot of those things now we can. So.
Absolutely, we can almost recycle everything in our waste stream. Almost. We're getting to the point where pretty soon, hopefully down the road, we will be able to.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Councillor Kaplan.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Robert, and it's great to see you here. And thanks so much for the real push on recycling and expanding that, and really serving our community with that array of products. I wanted to follow up on the bear question. I don't live high up on the hill, and we're seeing bears, more and more in our neighborhood. And I'm wondering, and I see bears, evidence of bears having gotten into garbage cans on my street and other streets, fairly down low on the hill. I'm wondering if you track that. I know you obviously know where you have bear canisters. Are you tracking where you're seeing evidence of a bear or other animal getting into the garbage cans that are not protected?
Yes and no. Partly because it changes with the seasonality and the weather. So kind of last year's patterns are a little bit different than this year's patterns. We do know where the bear carts are at because they are a specialty item. But as far as the bear patterns, it's mostly the drivers coming in being like, "Hey, there's bears over here on Hearsay, and we need to talk to the community about bear carts over there."
Yeah.
So.
Okay. And just one more question. Yeah. On a slightly different topic. Last year was the first year that we've had earlier hours, and we've just gone into June, so we've got the early hour start again. And I hear, sighs of complaint about that. Are you running into complaints from customers about the early start hours?
Yes, we are, and we try to handle those as carefully as we can, because there's not really a lot we can do other than try to move trucks around to different start points on the route, and it works and sometimes doesn't. So the biggest help for that has been going and talking to those customers and those residents and trying to explain why we're doing it. It's not to be rude or unpleasant first thing in the morning. It's just OSHA state law says we have to have these guys off route by this time. So yes, but if you have options on this, I would love some thoughts and feedback on how we can fix that.
Well, I mean, it's coupled with the bear problem, so people can't put it out at night. They've got to get there in the morning. And I'm an early morning person, so it's not a problem for me. But a number of my friends and neighbors, they say, "Oh, you gotta get it out."
Yeah.
So
I
okay.
completely understand.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Floor is open for a motion. Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt Resolution 2026-14.
Is there a second? Councillor Dale.
Thank you, and thank you both for coming. And just a couple notes that I wrote down up here, and I'm speaking quickly because I know we have time is of the essence, but I wanted to thank you for a few things. I really appreciate you recognizing the difficulty of rates. I appreciate the empathy that you displayed on behalf of the ratepayers and understanding what it's about. I appreciate the fact that you clearly articulated and outlined what the value is, because that's a lot of what we need. People need to understand, what am I getting for this? And I appreciate that you're really working towards efficiencies and understanding community needs. And yeah, I second the bear carts. I usually go out early in the morning and put a piece of paper under there or something so that the driver doesn't have to get out, because that's just my way of thank you.
Absolutely.
So,
well, quickly, I'll satisfy some things real fast. I just ordered a lot of bear carts, roughly over 1,500. So more to come. So.
Councillor Kaplan.
Thanks, Mayor.
Councillor Duquesne.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you both for coming and presenting and everything that you do. And I just want to kind of underscore what Councilor Dale just said, because I appreciate your thoughtfulness about the 8.75% increase. And like you said, what looking back the last 10 years and what that's averaged out. However, in this year, the ratepayers, the residents of Ashland have had so many increases on our utilities that while I appreciate what you do, I will not be supporting this. But thank you.
Thank you.
So I have a question that has come to me, because we've been here before with this contract, where the contract says that this will happen, and for some reason, it has to come to council for a vote. But by contract, if they've satisfied the calculations and they're staying within the contracted elements, we don't really have a legitimate reason to not pass it. Is that correct? So can you just help us understand that piece? Because we just keep coming back to this place, and it's a confusing time. But we are under contract that says that they get this rate increase, as assuming that they land on the, that they meet their requirements.
That's correct. And having not been here when it's first drafted, my best guess is it's for transparency. It's just
Yeah,
to show.
and
provide,
it makes sense to have him come in front of us. Okay, so yes, go ahead, Counselor.
I do understand that, and that's why I'm going to stand on principle and not vote for this, because it comes up annually and there's nothing that anyone can do, and I believe this AMC needs to be looked at again by this body instead of, I understand that Recology has monopoly on this, so I would like to see this body look at this and rewrite this when the time comes, if the time comes, because it just comes up annually and we have to adhere to it. So I'm going to stand on principle, and I cannot support this.
So we're at the discussion point, but I'll take another question. Counselor Hanson.
Thank you. Yeah, this is for maybe you or Johan. I mean, I wasn't on council when it accidentally got voted down, but then we got in legal trouble and had to come back and spend staff time and money to go back and redo this, right? That
Yes, it had to come right back to us because we didn't legally have the right to deny the increase.
Thank you.
Yes. So any other discussion? I would just like to say, I know that number of 3.9%, I believe is what you have that as, is the average. I know that part of why that is that you all didn't come to us during the COVID pandemic. And so I've always just appreciated the partnership and the understanding of how difficult it is for people at different points. It is hard right now. I appreciate that you recognize that. And fuel prices are through the roof. There's all sorts of things that we can't control. So thank you for coming and sharing the information in the packet. If there's no further discussion, roll call, please. Alyssa?
Sherrill? Yes. Dale?
Yes.
Kaplan? Yeah.
Yes.
Duquesne?
No.
Hanson?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, we're going to, thank you so much. We're going to jump into new business. We're taking up B, which is consideration of temporary halt on city herbicide use in parking lots, medians, and curb strips.
Yes.
Jordan.
I'm going to go fast, so please feel free to ask questions if I'm going too fast. But on the last joint study session, there was a request by council to bring up discussion on the potential suspension of herbicide use while we're developing a citywide integrated pest management policy. This kind of staff report identifies, what the impacts will be with a ban, and if there's any exceptions that staff's requesting if a ban is considered.
Yes. And I was just accepting these, and so if you said this, I apologize, but the other scope element of this is that this is so that we can have some time to address the wider policy. You may have said that, but I just wanted to make sure that we were clear about that. Okay, so questions of staff. Councilor Sherrill.
For the current time, are we, that we're currently suspended? I heard that there was potentially 2 to 4 FTEs that it was going to take to make up for what we were able to do with spraying. Is that still accurate?
No, just forget, we are not currently in any suspension. We are not spraying anything in the Grove parking lot due to the night lawn's proximity, but currently herbicide is being used elsewhere. When it comes to labor hours saved, our estimate that the use of herbicide is saving roughly 1,000 labor hours per year, which is anywhere from 0.7 to 1 FTE, depending on how close our estimate is. I will say for the duration of the suspension, while we're working on a citywide IPM that'll consider those larger long-term impacts, we can be using tactics such as additional mulch and more manual processes in the meantime to help keep seed dispersion as low as possible, which is really the purpose of herbicide during this season.
Thank you.
Councillor Hansen.
Thank you. I regret having to leave the joint parks and city council discussion on this due to childcare issues. But I was really glad that it's been brought up then and brought up now. And since then, I'm curious if Interim Director Dials or perhaps you have information on alternatives that have been sourced and costed out, like such as steam or other non-carcinogen based resources that can bring new information to the discussion.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and just share, rather than inviting Interim Director Dials up, we really changed, or the park system adopted their herbicide reduction, I should say, close to total ban in 2011. And at that time, they did test a lot of different methods for weed eradication. None of them are as effective at killing weeds quickly than herbicides. Some require more manual use than others, etc. I would recommend having those discussions and those considerations as we're considering the larger citywide IPM policy. During this suspension, I would not be expecting staff to be trying out those as much, particularly given I'm hopeful that we can work on that IPM policy over a 3 to 5 month period.
Quickly.
Follow up. Is it just parks employees that are using the chemicals, or is it also Public Works or other city employees?
Here in the city organization, our parks employees are the only certified sprayers we have on staff. We do have a contractor out at the airport who applies herbicides to stay up to our regulations for airport use, as well as we have a contractor, Freshwater Trust, that applies herbicides by the Ashland Pond as part of their restoration effort. And then we also apply herbicides pursuant to PUC requirements for our electrical substations. Those are not accessed by the public, but I did include them in our report just for everyone to know.
Well, I appreciate that we're talking about this here, and I'd be curious to hear what my fellow councilors think. I totally support not using herbicides in the city of Ashland at all, but I'm wondering why the Parks Commission isn't making this decision, why it's in front of city council right now.
And I can provide that detail. So the Parks Commission has an integrated pest management policy of no herbicide use within park designated land. Where we're applying herbicides right now is not park designated land. So they felt it more appropriately fell under the council jurisdiction and the council citywide policy.
Okay, so parks employees are putting it on non-park land?
Correct.
Okay.
Councillor Kaplan?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Jordan. I am fully in support of this for the suspension. I'd like to get a little bit of clarity on, you mentioned 3 to 5 months to come up with the work on that. I know that's not the topic for today, but maybe you could enlighten us a little bit about that and what the opportunity will be for taking advantage of public knowledge about this to develop the citywide policy.
Yeah, absolutely. How I would love to approach this, of course, I will check with our city manager to have her fully bless and develop a process. Would we get together a small management advisory committee of, for example, our SOU, their landscape maintenance group, some other folks, et cetera, our parks department, our public works department, to go through the parks plan and really highlight areas where it may cause friction for the larger city, and discuss some ideas and brainstorm ideas that we can then bring before council to then give their thoughts and input before bringing a final draft forward. This is going to be likely at the exact same time that we're discussing median designs, because our design of our median will also inform our herbicide use policy. So I imagine doing public input gathering for both those processes simultaneously, and to also, of course, have landscape architects on board, particularly for that median discussion.
Councillor Kaplan.
Yeah, thanks for that. I was just realizing that it's not just the IPM, the integrated pest management, it's also the median redesign and park strips. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yes, Councillor Hanson.
Thank you. Yeah, would we be able to add that to our Bee City USA Pollinator proclamation that we are an herbicide-free community 110% if we implemented this policy?
I would say, given that we just did our Bee City proclamation, that we will have an IPM policy in place, and if that's the direction of the council and the community, be herbicide-free, we will add that one to the proclamation.
Okay, thank you.
We have a year to get back to it. All right, we have 3 people who've signed up to speak with us this evening. Because time is of the essence, we are only going to be able to give each of you a minute and a half. Please keep your comments as tight as you can. The order that we'll take them in is Sharon Bryson, Angelina McLean, and Kate Hartzell. Please offer your testimony at the podium. Same structure as we have had before. Alyssa, if we can give them a 20-second signal to wrap up out of the minute and a half, that would be great. And go ahead and start by telling us your name and the city in which you reside to start your testimony.
Hi, Sharon Bryson. I live in Ashland, and I do really appreciate coming this far. I'm really happy to hear that there's consideration for reduction. The first thing I'd really like to point out is that, and maybe Jordan can speak to this, but there's a calculation here that talks about saving 1,000 hours of labor. But in this calculation, there's 4.4 acres of parking lot. And when I look at our land, we're not talking about 4.4 acres in the 3 parking lots that are getting treated. Because in those parking lots, it's only the strips that are getting treated. So we have to take the pavement part, in my opinion, out of this 4.4 acres. That's my first thing. Second thing is, when the 9.28, or when it was passed, it was talking about spot treatment. And I've watched this application happen. And the workers, they're doing their job, I understand. They have their backpacks with the toxin, and they're spraying this big of a swath of the liquid, and they're over and over and over. So it's not just a spot, they're impacting the entire soil where pollinators are nesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Angelina McLean, I live in Ashland. Thank you very much for considering a temporary halt in herbicide spraying. This is an important step in a more sustainable landscape maintenance plan for the city, for the medians and city property, and for working towards a citywide IPM policy. The current median spraying is often being applied to bare dirt where there are very few weeds or even no weeds present. There's a current application rate that we're noticing is about once a month, and I think we could be using non-chemical alternatives at a similar rate of application with possibly better results. To my eye, the glyphosate spraying appears to be damaging the existing plants and the health of the soil, and it's especially noticeable along Ashland Street, which could actually create higher costs for future median redesign. Lastly, I'll mention again that we very strongly recommend an ad hoc committee formed for adopting a citywide IPM that involves citizens, and that we utilize organizations like Xerxes Society, which is Bee City USA, or Beyond Pesticides that offer their free expertise going forward into the IPM process. They have staff who are there for exactly this situation. Let's make sure the IPM is well-rounded, well-implemented, and the process is informed and productive with documentation that is transparent and available to the public. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kate Hartzell. We invite people from across the region on the 4th of July to come and put their children and their pets and their elders and their blankets on the grass strips along Siskiyou Boulevard to watch the parade. That was sprayed with cancer-causing poisons less than a week ago. So when they sit there, please watch them and understand that they're sitting on top of grass that not just was sprayed recently, but has been in that spray cycle. Last summer, when Parks threatened to close the community gardens and the splash pad, I asked for the budget so that maybe some of the gardeners could alleviate some of the staff time. They said, we don't have a budget. We don't track by program. We don't track our hours to a particular program. So any of the numbers that are being given to you as estimates for what you're saving are inaccurate. And so that Sharon touched on some of that tonight. I hope that this moratorium will give you time to kind of look at that and also study what the alternatives are. My other reason for making sure you know that I asked about the impact on the community garden is, as a gardener, we're not allowed to use certain organic treatments, not poisons. Those are totally but there are certain organic treatments that the park prohibits us from using on our gardens. So the parks is definitely concerned about making sure that the land stays safe for people. And I hope you'll make the same decision tonight to study it.
Thank you. I have a question. So I see in the packet that the Parks Department also requests an exception for the 3 north entryway medians along North Main Street. So the motion is a general motion about herbicides on parking lots, medians, and curb strips without that breakout of those 3. So that's something for us to consider.
Correct.
Okay, great. Any further questions of staff? Floor is open for a question.
Just one for you, Mayor, actually. What exactly was the wording, the 3 medians?
The 3 medians.
Along North Main Street?
The 3 north entryway medians along North Main Street. And this is because this is a fast-moving median, and they're trying to reduce their staff time for a safety issue.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. So if there are no more questions, the floor is open for a motion. Councillor Dale?
Thank you. I move to direct staff to suspend the use of herbicides on parking lots, medians, and curb strips with the exception of the north entryway 3 medians along North Main Street until a citywide integrated pest management policy is adopted.
Is there a second? Councillor Dale?
No, thank you. It's a great idea.
Councillor Duquesne?
Thank you. It's about time. I look forward to it.
Any further discussion? Councillor Sherrill?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think this is a no-brainer, especially given the city that we're in and knowing our audience, and it might be a little bit more work in the end, depending on what we have to do, but this is like work and labor that's worth it.
Councillor Hansen?
Yeah, there's many, many alternatives out there, and I know that there's something that's going to be worker-friendly and bee-friendly, too. So I support this 110%. Thank you.
Councillor Kaplan? I'm looking forward to having a single consistent policy across the entirety of the city operation. So roll call, please, Alyssa.
Dale?
Yes.
Sherrill?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Duquesne?
Yes.
Kaplan?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Great. We move on now to the proposed resolution, public meeting records policy, video recording, ownership, retention, and access, minutes, content standards. Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to everyone, and a special thank you to Councillor Kaplan, who joined me in this, to something that's been on our collective minds and is long overdue, relative to how we handle and our minutes, which are just absolutely critical to understanding context and the business of the city. To be clear, I'm just going to go through these kind of rather quickly, just due to time. We absolutely follow Oregon law as it relates to public minutes retention. There are a few things more critical, as we said, than our historical record, and while we've done an absolutely solid job, our recorders over the years have done so, it's just long overdue that we adapt to current technologies. The city pays $74,000 a year for meeting videos through RVTV through a partnership with SOU. They do a phenomenal job. But the problem is, and it's just a gap, is that we don't own any of that content. And while RVTV has always been an outstanding partner, and Jordan has verified that they will gratefully share that video. That's just one of the things that we have a duty as a council, as a governing body, as a municipality, to own our content and to be able to have that available for future generations and for people to look backward as far. A couple other things. Oregon state law, you just have to keep audio and video recordings for a year. That's it. I think we can do much better than that. There's no reason why we shouldn't hold our video recordings in perpetuity. The technology, it's just the storage is cheap. There's no cost barrier anymore. And I really struggle with the fact that while we make our recordings available on third-party platforms, we've seen over the past several years what can happen relative to censorship or canceling or terms of agreement that have changed. And so while I have no problem, we have no problem, making that available at low cost on things like YouTube or any other partner. If it were to suddenly go away and it's not ours, we're out of luck. And so we need to be able to have that locally stored and to be able to present that to the public. And then I've also added in here, we've added in that this should extend to all of our advisory committees too, especially as we heard with Surge tonight and other communities. It's so important for people from an equitable lens to be able to, I can't attend a meeting or I can't physically be there at the right time because I'm taking care of family or I have work commitments or whatever, to be able to go in, watch that video, see exactly what happened. And something that Councilor Kaplan had pointed out, which is of critical importance, is that we have exact wording of what staff direction is or what we've decided as a council, and we can go back, I went back, I'm sure everybody else did, in years going back to understand water treatment plant and parks and anything else, and it's just so important to have this. And now we have this technology at our disposal at a low cost to be able to just click and watch. And I think that this allows committee chairs to be able to do that, any designated individual, because we have this. So anyway, that's people can read more about it, but the resolution is there to be able to provide for what really is something that I believe is long overdue. And hopefully this council will support the intention of what we're trying to do in the spirit.
Questions? Councillor Duquesne.
So, thank you. I want to thank my colleagues for bringing this up. And I was looking at page 2. It's under E, and it says contents only. It says the chair or staff liaison is responsible for preparing agendas and minutes. First off, I really appreciate having the opportunity to look back at past meetings because things go by so quickly and I can see what I said and how you voted and how things happened, and I can be brought up to speed immediately on that second reading or whatever that looks like. And when I look at E, I want to touch base on something that you mentioned earlier, Councilor Dale, is that when our community came up, and they are members of Surge, PAC, and I'll say the Historic Committee also, and their schedules are being cut because of, I believe, staff liaison. Am I correct when I say that, Deputy City Manager?
I'm sorry, Councilwoman, can you repeat that question?
Their scheduled meeting times of once a month is being cut because of staff liaison, correct?
You're talking about the certain committees going to quarterly meetings?
Yes.
One of the primary purposes is to reduce staff time spent at those prepping, and serving those committees.
So when I look at this, if we can adopt this, the chair of the committee or staff liaison is responsible for preparing the agendas and the minutes. So that would take away from staff time, because I say that to say that if we are going to reduce these 3 committees to quarterly, then we should be equitable and all committees should be quarterly. That is my point, and I think that this is making my point for me, So I appreciate not only having the history of all of our minutes that have happened and that will happen, but also freeing up the staff time so that our committees can get back to their monthly schedules and so they can take care of the business of the people. It's not equitable if we just cut 3. That's what I'm saying.
I just have a clarification question. Councilor Gann, are we recommending that if we move to recording all of our committee meetings, that we no longer have written minutes, but just use the video recording? No. Okay, thank you.
No, but I think we do need to keep this focused on this particular resolution in front of us. So are there any other questions of staff?
And what, if I can say in closing, is that I want to appreciate my colleagues for bringing this forward. And then I will be bringing this forward at another meeting so that we can talk about getting back on schedule. Thank you.
Councilor Hanson.
I think I'm directing this to Councilor Dale. It's more of a question of the number that you raised earlier. You said that we were spending $74,000 a year.
No, that's what our contract is with RVTV.
Yeah. And just a small correction, because we have had separate contracts for our park commission, our city council. They'll all be in one contract this upcoming year for $99,000 a year.
Correct. And just to, go ahead. I'm sorry, Councilor.
No, finish.
I was
finish
just
the
going to
thought.
say, so just so you know, relative to that contract, what we're doing with RVTV, which is again, using their outstanding production value for council meetings, study sessions, parks commissions meetings, study sessions, budget committee and planning commission, and then we will use other video platforms, Teams, Zoom, whatever staff chooses for the other committees. It won't be the 3-camera sitcom setup like we have here, but it will just be something that's very cost effective for all of our advisory committees and our standing advisory committees, just so that we have record of all those. But it won't, but that's outside of the RVTV contract.
Okay. Yeah, I would be curious as part of this to see what that whole picture is. Like Councilor DeCane brought up, I was saddened to hear that Surjack has been limited. I understand that we as a city need to constrict and find cost savings. I would be curious though to see if we could use some of those resources that we're saving in this. I think it's a wonderful idea and I fully support it. And now can we use some of that money to support more advisory committees getting back on the monthly schedule? It's something that I think budgetarily maybe the budget committee will look at, but it brings up a really good point.
And I think that's probably a separate question, but go ahead, Councilor Dale.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so I appreciate the Councilor, and this leads into that, and I'm sure we'll have that separate discussion, which will come with Councilor DeCane. What this does is this allows, and I want to get into the how of staff will do it, but the budget is relatively low. I mean, as you know, storage is so low. It's being able to just all the technological facilities. The cost shouldn't be an issue. Your question will absolutely be taken up, I believe, when Councilor DeCane brings that forward, because that's a worthy discussion for that, if that makes sense.
Right.
But the cost savings is kind of de minimis relative to this, but it allows for staff and logistics time to do what you want to do.
I think I understand really clearly. Thank you.
So I have a question of staff. Is there anything that the council should be thinking about in terms of this? I mean, I think we see it as a way of improving, what we're looking at and making sure that we're holding on to those records. But is there anything that we should be thinking about? Any considerations? Yes, Recorder.
I'd just like to clarify that I think it's totally fine if chairs are doing agendas and minutes, but it still requires the staff liaison to put them into our software. And staff liaisons are the only ones who have access to any of our video platforms. So just to clarify that piece.
Okay.
And I think I can quickly do that. So thank you, Alyssa. I appreciate it. I think, again, without stepping on the how, I think the expectation would be, if this passes, would be something to work with IT or something to say, is there something that we could leverage simple technology to say, here's the recording, how do you feed it into an AI transcriber or something, or however that works? We do that now and drop it in. So I do understand that there is staff time to be able to say, take this, transmit it, throw in a folder, have it set up. But I think it's reasonable and doable if you do too. Thanks.
Jordan?
Yeah, I would say overall, this is a policy direction decision that whatever council makes, we will find the technological solution and the operational process to make it happen. You know, the one part that gives me pause is just the time on this, because we do have our RVTV contract that is up June 30th this year. They're on board with making sure we download our own copies of the videos, that we have access, et cetera. I have not talked with them about any concerns around intellectual property rights or that specific language. I do know, talking to their director, they're like, you know, we put it all in the public domain. We don't feel like we have intellectual property right. So I don't foresee it becoming an issue, but I don't want it to run into an issue that prevents us from delaying implementation of a new contract.
And we need a motion.
Thank you. If I
Floor is
may.
open for a motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt resolution number 2026 with a number to be determined by the city recorder, unless you have one right now, establishing the City of Ashland public meetings record policy and to direct the city manager to initiate renegotiation of the RBTV services agreement prior to any extension and retrieve and assume ownership and make publicly available all past recordings from the SOU RBTV within 90 days.
Is there a second? Okay. Okay, so we're back to that. Did you have any additional?
You know, I would have asked for slight flexibility in the specific contract terms, knowing the intent is getting our video ownership, both historically and moving forward, to meet that. However, I will operate under whatever the council direction is if you all adopt this resolution.
Councilor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. I would say, Jordan, that I understand that there would be some reasonable flexibility in there, which you guys come up with a contract. I don't think it needs to be, I mean, we want this here. I think this is clear intent of what, if council supports what we're trying to do here. Certainly the wording and the verbiage, I think there's no, it doesn't sound like there's any misunderstanding of what we're trying to do. And again, they've been a great partner. So I would be hesitant to support any contract that kind of leaves it open. I mean, we just spent quite a bit of time saying we need to make sure that words matter. And because they're willing to, I think I would hope that staff would make every effort to really dial that in to codify our intent in the contract, but certainly work it as you see fit from an administrative standpoint, if that's fair.
Thank you, and we'll make sure Johan's office is involved to help with the semantics.
Well, I actually have a question on that, or a couple of things on that. One would be, when you say ownership of it, I'm not entirely clear what you mean, because I don't know of any cases in Oregon, but I know California has struggled trying to copyright publicly available stuff. I mean, these meetings, they're specifically designed not to be copyrighted. They want people to download and disseminate them and use them.
Let me see if I can, so I understand what you're trying to say. What I'm interested in from an ownership, and it's kind of hard because we're talking about zeros and ones, we're not talking about a thing. I'm not as interested in the copyright, you know, as far as the issue is that when a video such as this one is finally produced and made available, that we have ownership of that content. Okay, now it may not be copyrighted, but it's physical possession of that on our infrastructure. It belongs to us. No other entity can say, take that down, it's not yours. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I mean, all that stuff is already publicly available, and so that's...
But it's publicly available on a platform that isn't ours. If RVTV shut that down, we would not have that content.
Okay.
That's what I'm worried about.
So I don't know that that's necessarily a contract term, rather than us putting in our resolution, we'll host a copy of these videos. That's what I'm trying to debate. I mean,
So when RVTV posts something, when they finish tonight, that content will be stored somewhere. A copy of that needs to be on our infrastructure with our control and management. Now, they can take it and they can post it somewhere and they can duplicate it and they can do whatever they want, and we appreciate that. But at least we have ownership of it from a legal sense.
so I guess what I'm saying is, as part of a contract term, I'm not really tracking how that really makes sense, because are we going to require RVTV to post it on our website? Are we going to, I mean,
we're
they're
requiring,
producing it and giving it to us, if that's what you're asking, like.
they don't give it to us now.
We can download it at any time.
Could they stop us from doing that?
No, it's anyone on their app can download any video, since it's a public domain app that they're producing it on.
If they shut down one day, how would you get your stuff?
Well, through June 30th, I'll have our contract that it
Thank
will be
you.
available.
That's all I wanna make
And
sure
I
of.
will, I'm also sure of this too. I don't want us to make a decision pressure on time. I do fully understand, I think, the direction. I'm also happy to bring you in a little bit to look at the contract before we sign for your input. And then we could bring a policy back that's around the committee meetings, council meetings, et cetera, to, if you all want more time to discuss. I want to put that as an option on the table too.
I am concerned with the contract being signed without these provisions being in it.
To
Unless
clarify
I-
the Section 8 provisions of the resolution.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councilor Hanson.
Thank you. I'd like to take this opportunity to extend the meeting up to 15 minutes to cover the Madrone Ridge topic next.
We aren't able to. We can only go up for 10 minutes past the 9:30 time period, but we've had a discussion and Madrone Ridge is not, it's not going to have an issue, a timeliness issue.
Well, it's on the agenda to start in August, and if we did it at
Yeah,
the
but we're not on
mid-July.
that agenda item. We need to stay on this one because we have 5 more minutes.
But
No,
I thought Robert
no,
Rules of
we-
Order, point of order, please. I believe Robert Rules of Order, as long as there's a motion on the table, you can extend for whatever reason you like.
There's currently a motion on the table, which we've extended past 9:34.
And I can make another motion to
No,
extend.
not at this
for-
time. There's a motion on the floor right now. There's
Yes.
currently a motion for this resolution.
Okay.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor about this particular resolution. Are there any additional questions about it? A question? Yes, Councilor Duquesne.
Heard you right. What is your title? No, it's late. No. Deputy Director, thank you. Deputy George, okay, thanks, Ron. So if I heard you correctly, you had shared with Councilor Dale that before this is signed, it will come back and Councilor Dale can take a look at it to make sure that the requests are there properly. Is that correct? That
I
the
would love to have
request-
him be part of the group reviewing it prior to signature.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate that. I want to be very careful that I'm not stepping on any kind of staff or administrative stuff, and if the city management is okay with it, then I'd gladly look, but I'm just proceeding with a ton of caution on that, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I want to recognize that because you're right. The city manager's not here tonight. Our goal is to match whatever your policy intent is to our tools we have to operate it. I can also talk to RVTV too if there's possible for an extension of that deadline for us to be able to bring back something more robust before you all.
Councilor Kaplan.
Yeah, and Jordan, what I'm hearing you say is that everybody has the right to just download it ourselves. So we could just simply have our own policy that says that within 24 hours, we staff are going to download the content from RVTV. And we already have the ability to save our own Zoom recordings of advisory committee meetings. Is that right?
Got distracted. But yes, we can download that at any time. And for those committees that currently use Zoom, we have the potential to record. We do have some that meet in person without any Zoom as well. So that
And
would
that's
be
a different question for us to take up.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Around committee operation, I believe. Okay, any other questions? Okay, any other discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Sherrill? Yes. Dale?
Yes.
Yes.
Kaplan?
Yes.
Duquesne?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Motion passed.
So we, by our rules, when we get to 9:30, we can have 10 more minutes if we have a motion on the floor, but then we are not allowed to have additional agenda items come up beyond that. So that's where we are at for this evening. We are out of time to take up any additional agenda items, so the meeting is adjourned.